He was the kingdom's top court alchemist, but politicians didn't even realize this and kicked him out. At the invitation, he decides to go to the village of the Beastmen. His alchemy isn't for nobles anymore, it's for crops, creatures, and chaos. And so begins the story of great achievements in agriculture. Can an outcast alchemist build the perfect life in a new place? Let's find out. The story begins with the protagonist holding a tomato in his hand and thinking about how rich its color is. But won't the fruit turn out to be too sour? Next time, he needs to get a sweeter harvest. The girl called his name, Mr. Isagi. She said that everyone was gathered and were waiting only for him. The protagonist replied that he would be right there. Isagi wants to improve the life of this village with the help of alchemy. The Remorus Empire. Remorus Castle. The man addressed the protagonist by name and said that from today on, he was removing him from the position of court alchemist. The protagonist was surprised. He asked why. After all, he was quite capable of fulfilling the duties of a court alchemist. The man was surprised. Was he asking about this? He replied that the main duty of a court alchemist was to make magical weapons for military needs. But he neglects his work duties and constantly digs in the ground. Isn't that true? The man was the head of the Imperial Alchemy Department named Garius. The protagonist objected that this was not digging in the ground. He pulled out a pouch from his sleeve and asked to take a look. He said that he uses alchemy to select crops, and he grows varieties that can grow even on completely barren land. The chief asked, "Plants? Nonsense. If there is not enough food, then it must be taken by force. This method is much more effective." Isagi was tired of proving his case. The Remorus Empire is a militaristic state that became a great power through aggression and conquest. Therefore, they invest a large amount of capital and human resources in military affairs. However, such irresponsible policies make the people suffer. In order to save this country, the protagonist wanted to solve the food problem with alchemy, but he was misunderstood. Garius said that the protagonist shied away from work and cultivated the fields within the castle walls. But now his willful behavior has come to an end. Isagi asked if he was dismissed. He thought that he had been doing his job properly. He was just an ordinary boy from an orphanage, so the boss looked down on him. He was just doing what he had to do. Alchemy doesn't exist to kill people. Can't it be used to make people happy? Garius said sternly that the protagonist was free. Alchemists must obey silently. Isagi was sure that the department head only thought of alchemists as tools. He replied that he understood. The order was accepted. Isagi's workshop. The girl wished him a good morning. She asked how his day was. This girl was a maid from the beast race named Mercia. Isagi asked her if she had arrived yet. Mercia was a court servant, and in between work, she helped him in this workshop in order to create crops that grew on depleted soil. They did research together here. She was worried that something was bothering the master. Mercia asked what happened. Isagi replied that he was simply fired. Mercia was indignant. How was that possible? She said that the gentleman worked for the good of the empire. She simply could not accept it. Isagi asked her to calm down. Mercia asked if the protagonist was angry. MC replied that he would be lying if he said so. But it was enough for him that she had acknowledged him. He thanked her for worrying about him so much. After all, he was an orphan and had been alone for a long time. He was glad when she became his friend. Mercia asked Mr. Isagi what he would do now. The protagonist replied that since he didn't expect to be fired, he hadn't come up with anything yet. He wondered if they would be happy to see him at the orphanage. Another question was, would he be able to work and live there? Mercia wondered what to do. She thought about it and said that since this was the situation, could he go to her homeland? Isagi was surprised. Mercia got flustered and said that she didn't mean anything like that. She was just offering a change of scenery. Isagi said that as far as he remembered, her homeland was the Beast Kingdom, right? Mercia said yes. It was just a village on the outskirts. Isagi said that he was glad she invited him, but would he be of any use there? Mercia said of course. With an alchemist like Mr. Isagi with them, things would be much better. She said that although her village was quite blessed with natural resources, the food situation was getting worse every year. Isagi said that when she first wanted to help him with his research, she said that she wanted to make life easier for everyone by creating crops that could grow even in poor soil. He then promised that as soon as he finished working on the seeds, he would send them to her homeland. He had just finished working on the crop the other day and managed to collect some data. And if they make it so that the culture can easily grow on every plot of land, then it will be a success. The protagonist understood everything. Isagi replied that he was sending her to her homeland. The protagonist said that they would be able to use the crops they had bred there, and if they managed to achieve an abundance of food, then they should be able to spread the success throughout the world. Mercia thanked Mr. Isagi. She asked if he was sure about this. She thought that with his abilities and the varieties he had bred, he could be useful in any country. Isagi clarified, but she invited him herself? Mercia replied that she had said this in a fit of enthusiasm. The protagonist said that it was better to accept the help of a neighbor than to be tied hand and foot without the ability to do anything. Acting freely, they should be able to change the empire. After all, she helped him not only with his research, she always supported him, and as gratitude, he wanted to help her. He asked, "Is it really impossible?" She replied, "Of course she could. She would be very happy about that." Isagi said that he would pack his things and go to the Beast Kingdom. Mercia replied that in that case she would quit and they would go together. Isagi replied that they would see each other later. Mercia went about her business, but he stopped her. He asked if she was going to quit and go with him. Mercia replied, "Of course." After all, she couldn't leave him alone. The protagonist asked if she was sure she wanted to quit her job. After all, working in the palace was elite and the salary there was not small. Mercia smiled and said that now he was calming her down, just like she had done recently. Isagi was surprised and said that then they would go together. A few days later, Mercia suggested that they go slowly. She asked if she needed anything else. Isagi replied that he had put water and food in a magic bag, so there should be no problem. It is a magical thing in the form of a backpack created using alchemy. It can store more things than it actually does. Mercia said that it would take about a month to get to the Beast Kingdom. She suggested that they just enjoy it. Isagi agreed. Days passed. September 6th, September 12th, September 17th, September 28th, October 7th. Mercia woke up Lord Isagi and told him that they had arrived. He looked out the window and saw Mercia's homeland, the Beast Kingdom, the village of Pluminia. Isagi was surprised at how many beast people there were. Even though they were on the outskirts, it was still the Beast Kingdom. Mercia suggested that they go to her house. The protagonist asked if he shouldn't greet the village chief first. Shouldn't he be surprised at the person who suddenly arrived? Mercia said that there was no need to worry about that because the village chief was her father. The protagonist was surprised. He said that she should have told him about it earlier. Mercia apologized and said that she wanted to surprise him, so she kept quiet. Isagi wondered what to do. Now he was getting nervous. What if the village chief said that they didn't need any alchemists? Mercia replied that everything would be fine. If he continued to say such things, she would hit him. Teach him a lesson. She called him and showed him the way. When they approached a large house, Mercia said that this was her house, so they were there. She wanted to talk to her father and mother first. Isagi agreed. As soon as Mercia touched the door handle, her mother ran out of the door and screamed, "Welcome back." Mercia asked her not to jump out like that, because she scared her. Isagi entered the house and saw a man who was looking at him sternly. He thought that this man was Mercia's father? The protagonist felt hostility emanating from him. The man offered to sit down. The protagonist thanked him and apologized for disturbing him. He said that he was glad to meet him. He came from the Remuris Empire and he was an alchemist named Isagi. The man shouted at the protagonist to shut up. He said that he wasn't going to give his daughter to some dude of dubious origin. The MC was surprised. The man shouted that Mercia was his precious daughter. Why should he give her to this guy who just showed up? Mercia's mom said that she liked the guy quite well. Isagi apologized and tried to explain everything. Mom said that Mercia finally brought a man home. She must have already made up her mind. Mercia stood up, closed her eyes and screamed, "Stop! It's not like that." She said that she wanted to introduce Mr. Isagi as a new resident of this village. Her dad opened his mouth in surprise, and her mom smiled sweetly. The man tried to start a new conversation. He introduced himself that his name was Kelsey, and he was the head of this village. He asked the protagonist if he really wanted to move to this village. Isagi replied that he wanted to be allowed to carry out alchemy activities in this village. Mercia's mom and dad thought about it. Isagi asked what happened. Mercia said that mom and dad just don't know what alchemy is. Kelsey replied that it was embarrassing to admit, but that's how it is. The protagonist asked if they've ever met alchemists. Mercia replied that alchemists are rare in these parts. MC decided to explain who alchemists are first. In simple terms, alchemists are people who control matter with the help of magical power. They can process and qualitatively change the structure of materials using magic. Of course, it is difficult to make a thing that is very different in quality from the original matter, but it is an extremely practical art. Mom and dad were silent. Mercia said that it was too difficult to understand. It would be faster to show alchemy in practice. The protagonist agreed. He asked Mr. Kelsey for permission to borrow his sword on his belt. Isagi carefully examined the sword. Kelsey said that it was an excellent thing made of manatite that he bought the other day. MC said that there was no manatite in this dagger. Kelsey was indignant. Isagi said that alchemists are endowed with the ability to see through the true nature of materials. This material is very similar to manatite, but it is a low-quality metal namatite. Manatite contains magical power. Kelsey said with sadness in his eyes that he paid 20 silver coins for this dagger. Isagi said that everything will be fine. He will transform this dagger into a dagger made of real manatite. Kelsey asked how he could do this. The protagonist took off his gloves and began to examine the dagger. The dagger hung in the air above his hands. First, he needed to understand the shape and weight of the dagger. Then, Isagi added the necessary material to the dagger. He carefully checked his work. He handed the finished dagger to the owner. Kelsey asked if this dagger was made of real manatite. Isagi said to test it, "You need to send a stream of magical power through it." Kelsey screamed and threw the dagger at the target hanging on the wall. The dagger spun in the air and hit the target right on the target, but it made a huge hole in the wall onto the street. Kelsey looked out the window and said that this was cool. Kelsey's wife patted him on the shoulder and asked what he was doing. Kelsey replied that he didn't think the dagger was that powerful. Mercia's mother asked her husband not to make excuses. Kelsey apologized again. Isagi apologized and said that he should have warned about this, and he could quickly repair the damaged house. Kelsey said that this was cool and thanked Mr. Isagi. The protagonist said that alchemists are capable of this, but most of all, he wants to do farming using alchemy. The village chief replied that unfortunately, this land is barren and there is no point in doing this. Isagi said that he knows that for this reason, the mountain and forest resources are decreasing. The village chief asked why. Knowing all this, the protagonist came all the way here? MC replied because he wants to improve the food situation with the help of alchemy. Kelsey thought about it. Isagi said that he heard from Mercia about the situation of the village and wants to make farming possible, even on poor soil, using varieties improved by alchemy, and also to reduce the number of starving people, even by one. Kelsey listened to him attentively. Mercia said that if things were left as they were, the wealth of the mountains and forests would be greatly reduced. Her father tried to interrupt her. Mercia begged for the sake of the village's future to allow Lord Isagi to take up farming using alchemy. The village chief replied that it was not that he suddenly believed in miracles, but that maybe the protagonist really did have a chance. He said that he would give him permission. Isagi and Mercia both said thank you very much. The village chief said that the protagonist needed his own place to live, so they would give him a house with a large area. Mercia's mother asked her to accompany Mr. Isagi to a free house. Mercia called Isagi with a smile on her face. The protagonist felt constrained in the palace, but here he could do whatever he wanted, completely devoting himself to his favorite business. Thanks to alchemy, he would make life in this village more beautiful. Mercia showed that Mr. Isagi's house was here. This is where a new life begins. The protagonist was very surprised when he saw the old, dilapidated house. He asked if this was his new home. Mercia couldn't believe her eyes, because in front of them was an old, shabby, dilapidated house. She didn't believe that her father was going to force Mr. Isagi to live in such a terrible house. The protagonist remembered the village chief's words that the house was a bit old. Mercia said that she couldn't allow this and would go and tell her father everything. Isagi said that everything was fine. If the house was not fit for habitation, it would be better to rebuild it. This is how all alchemists think. Besides, he always wanted to try to build the house of his dreams. Mercia asked again, the house of his dreams? When he was a court alchemist, he was treated badly because he was a simple man from an orphanage. Perhaps that's why he lived in a studio that looked more like a warehouse. Isagi said that he would try to build what he liked himself. Mercia agreed with him. The protagonist touched the house to feel the wood. He wondered if it was possible to reuse the old boards. Isagi decided that they should first demolish the house. He directed a stream of magic at the house, then changed the quality of the wood, then touched the house, and it fell. The protagonist froze. Mercia said that she would take the dismantled boards aside. MC thanked her. He thought that these boards must be quite heavy. Next, he decided to prepare the area and get rid of the weeds. He pulled out a bottle of hybrid herbicide from his bag, in which he qualitatively changed the composition of the product using alchemy. He significantly strengthened and accelerated its effect. Isagi said that they could begin construction. He pulled out a block of ent wood from his bag, which he managed to get from a plant monster. Using magic, he increased its strength. Then the protagonist used hovering levitation and all the boards soared upward. He directed them with his hand in the right direction. The boards themselves were laid out as they should be. Mercia stood and watched in amazement. Isagi was glad that no one was limiting him anymore. He had a perfect plan for the building in his head. All that was left was to implement it. Board to board, tile to tile, and the new house was ready. In front of Mercia stood a new, neat, and beautiful house. She said, "Excellent." Isagi asked if he had overdone it. Mercia replied that now she understood what his dream house looked like. Everything in the house was new and clean. Isagi gave a tour of the entire house. They climbed the stairs to the second floor and looked into the bathroom. The protagonist said that he would slowly set up a normal workplace a little later. He asked Mercia if she would help him arrange the furniture. She replied, of course, she could be trusted. He pulled out a table and a chair from his magic bag. MC said that this was all they brought with them. If you look at it, it looks like they didn't bring any furniture. Mercia said that there was nothing to be done, because many things did not fit in that warehouse. The protagonist had already forgotten that he lived in a warehouse. Suddenly, someone called Mercia. She went out onto the porch of the house and saw her mother. Looking at the house, her mother asked if their village had always had such a wonderful house. Mercia answered that Mr. Asagi had remade it with alchemy to make it more comfortable to live in. Mom asked again, "Remade it?" She said that alchemy really is a cool thing. Isagi apologized for remaking everything here at his own discretion. Mom replied that everything was in perfect order. She apologized for coming so suddenly. She thought she would help with cleaning so that the house could be lived in right away. Well, if that was the case, then it seemed there was no need for that. Isagi said that he was very pleased with her concern. Mercia's mother asked permission to see the inside of the house. The protagonist invited her to come in. Mom walked around and marveled at how amazing the house was. The spacious kitchen looked especially good. Isagi noticed that Mercia couldn't reach the top shelves. He asked if they were too high for her. Mercia stood on her tiptoes and said that she could reach them if she stretched. MC immediately made the shelves lower. Mercia's mother said that if all the utensils were put away, this kitchen would be even better than the one at home. Mercia asked if Mom had furniture and household items that they didn't use. Could they move them here? After some time, Mercia stood in the middle of the kitchen, which was supplemented with household items for comfort. Isagi said that thanks to her, this room began to look like a residential building. Mercia replied that she was glad. She said that the walls seemed empty and she wanted to hang something on them, and she wanted to put some kind of vase on the table. The protagonist was silent. Mercia suggested having dinner. She said that her mother gave them a delicious dish, so they could eat already. Opening the lid of the pan, Isagi said that it looked delicious. He asked if it was milk soup. Mercia apologized for the modest dish. Isagi replied that he wanted to eat exactly that. She thanked him. Sienna's special dish is milk soup made from mountain herbs and mushrooms. The protagonist took out his bread from his magic bag. He held a spoon in his hands and said, "Let's get started." Mercia stood to the side and wished him a bon appetit. Isagi didn't understand why she wasn't sitting at the table. He asked if she wasn't going to eat with him. Mercia was surprised and said that she was a servant and couldn't sit at the same table with him. Isagi replied that they weren't in the castle anymore and no one would scold her for that. Mercia was surprised and asked if it was really okay. The protagonist offered to eat together again. Mercia thanked him for letting her join him. Isagi said that it was somehow unusual for him that she was sitting opposite him. Mercia replied that she felt the same way. For some reason, she couldn't calm down if she wasn't standing next to him. The protagonist replied that it wasn't surprising. She needed to try to suppress this feeling. He took a spoon and decided to eat, so thanks again for the food. The protagonist put the spoon in his mouth. Delicious. The sweetness of milk opens up in his mouth. Isagi asked Mercia what the name of this plant is. She answered him, "It's kirkuk grass. It often grows in the surrounding forests, a wild plant." Mercia tried the soup. It was really delicious. The protagonist liked it. The stem was crispy, and the boiled leaves were soft. This grass is probably delicious both boiled and fried. And besides, the taste of mushrooms and the salty taste of bacon go well with the delicate sweetness of milk. MC dipped bread into the plate. The bread, which had fully absorbed all of this, became soft and easy to eat. Mercia thought what a relief. Isagi said that he was full. Mercy answered him. She was glad that the protagonist liked the food. The girl collected the dishes and said that she would wash them. MC tried to stop her and said that she did not need to do this. He would clean up himself. The protagonist decided that it would be better for her to return home. After all, she returned to her homeland after so much time. Mercia was indignant and said that she would stay. Isagi was surprised, so she wants to stay here for the night? The girl answered, it would be more correct to say she is going to live here. And serve him, Lord Isagi. The protagonist was very surprised by this and said, wait a minute, Mercia. This is not the Imperial Palace. And MC is no longer a court alchemist. Do they understand that? The girl answered that she understood that. And yet she's ready to serve him as long as Lord Isagi's soul desires. She firmly replied that she could not be persuaded. The protagonist objected, but he needs to make a bedroom for Mercia. It will not be possible to build it now. The girl answered, if this is the problem, then her things are already in the free room on the second floor. MC said she works quickly as always, and still, it is not worth it. Mercia asked, is it really impossible? The protagonist was outraged by this, but answered calmly that he would be glad, and her help would be useful. She was glad. Really? Isagi confirmed this and said, however, should she tell her parents? They will worry. Especially her father, Kelsey. The girl smiled and replied that she had her mother's permission. The protagonist was surprised. Mom? What does she mean by that? But Mercia didn't have time to answer. From the street came her father's shout. Mercia! Come home! Mercia, he won't let her live with Isagi. The next morning, the protagonist opened the door when he heard a knock on it. Mercia was standing at the threshold. MC greeted her. "Good morning." He asked, "Did she discuss everything with Kelsey properly yesterday?" The girl was silent for a while and then replied, "Unfortunately, she didn't get her father's permission, and she will have to come from home every morning to help Mr. Isagi." The protagonist was a little puzzled. That's how. Mercia apologized to him. MC thought, Mercia is Kelsey's precious daughter. It's natural that he wouldn't let her live with the protagonist. Isagi smiled and said, "Well, it seems she managed to have a proper talk with her father." The protagonist was quite satisfied with the girl just coming. Mercia responded indignantly, but she would still persuade her father so that she could live and work in the same house with Mr. Isagi. Until then, she asked to give her some time. The protagonist told her that she didn't need to go out of her way. It would be sad if she and her father quarreled. He thought an MC would also be nervous if they suddenly started living together. Mercia tried to object to him again, but they were interrupted by another female voice, which called her name questioningly. They both fell silent and turned towards the voice. There stood a girl. She was one of the beastmen. The girl screamed. It was her after all. Mercia recognized the girl and was surprised. "Nie?" She ran up to Mercia and took her hands. Nie said that she heard that Mercia had returned, so she came to meet her. Mercia was a little surprised. They hadn't seen each other for a long time. Nie asked, "Why did she come back so suddenly?" She didn't know what to answer and remained silent. At this time, the protagonist stood and looked at them. The girls felt his gaze and turned around. He waved his hand at them. Nie exclaimed happily. She understood. Mercia brought her husband. She screamed indignantly, "No." She told Nea everything, and the protagonist summarized the story. In other words, his name is Isagi, and he is an alchemist. Nea was surprised. He came to make this village prosperous with alchemy. How cool. It seems like he is not a bad person. She greets the protagonist. She extended her hand to him to introduce herself. She is Nea, Mercia's childhood friend. They shook hands and MC thought, she is so hospitable to him, a human, amazing. Nea asked, and yet was it Mercia who invited him? Mercia answered indignantly, yes, so what? The protagonist thought about it. He thought that he and Mercia didn't have many secrets from each other. But still, the sudden change in her expression showed that they got along well, didn't they? How he would like to have such a close friend for himself. Nea said that she was already leaving. She wished Isagi for his farm to prosper. Nea ran away and waved goodbye. Mercia apologized to the protagonist for her friend being noisy. MC calmed her down. No, he was glad that Nea talked to them. The protagonist suggested to start, so today they need to start working. Mercia was surprised. Already? He told her that he wanted to check as soon as possible whether the crop will grow here. Yesterday, he got rid of the weeds in this field when he was building a house. Now he needs to plow the land. Oh, there's a stone in the way. Let it serve as material. If he analyzes the stone's composition and changes its shape with magic, he'll get a golem. Check. And finally, he needs to insert the magic stone into his chest, which will become the driving force. Now, the golem is ready. The protagonist commanded, "Golem, go forward. Plow the land." The golem began to work. Isagi concluded, yes, there's no problem in the behavior and flow of magic power. Mercia said, as expected of a golem created by Mr. Isagi. She offered to go herself and spray herbicide over a wide area. Suddenly, Kelsey's voice was heard from behind them. Isagi, what is this? The protagonist turned around and was surprised. Kelsey. MC explained to him that this is a golem created through alchemy to help the protagonist in the field. The golem doesn't attack people, so there's no need to worry. Kelsey was puzzled. Is that so? How useful alchemy is. And yet, Isagi, can a harvest grow on this land? At this time, the golem was trying its best in the field. The protagonist replied to Kelsey that the quality of the soil was not much different from the soil in the Empire. So, he thinks that everything will grow here without problems. Of course, this is nothing more than an assumption. But still, Kelsey was happy. If this is true, then it's just wonderful. The protagonist noticed and thought, Mercia does not react to Kelsey at all, so she is angry. The atmosphere is tense. MC said that now he will grow plants, so if Kelsey wants, he can come and take a look. After all, if everything goes well, then you can immediately harvest. Kelsey chuckled incredulously and thought, immediately harvest? The protagonist continued to explain what he was doing. First, he scattered specially made fertilizers created through alchemy. The raw material is the fertilizer that is commonly used in the Empire, but instead of changing the properties or strengthening it, the protagonist personally made it more nutritious. Kelsey was surprised and did not understand anything from what the protagonist said. Mercia saw that Isagi was worried. She couldn't resist and explained, in short, this fertilizer was created by alchemical method in order to strengthen the depleted soil. Her father was surprised. Is that so? Girl turned to the protagonist and apologized to him for making him worry. The protagonist smiled. He thinks that she and her father have objections to each other, but they get along well, don't they? After all, family is irreplaceable. Mercia agreed with him. By this time, the golem had already stopped and was waiting for the next order. The protagonist asked the girl, "Okay, let's scatter the fertilizer then?" The girl agreed with him. Isagi explained, "The places where the fertilizer will be scattered, the golem will mix with a hoe and make beds, and in places with prepared soil, they will plant seeds." Kelsey was surprised and asked Isagi, before mixing the soil with fertilizer, "Shouldn't you wait?" The protagonist answered him, "Usually that's true. But since the fertilizer he made also accelerates the rate of decomposition, time is saved and there is no need to mix it thoroughly." Kelsey was surprised and happy. Wow. Mercia told her father that for Mr. Isagi it was easy as pie. MC looked at them and thought, and the bar seemed to have grown. The protagonist took out a bag and said that first they would plant a plant that grows easily even in the wasteland and is close to everyone. It would be a selectively bred potato. It is necessary to place potato seeds in a hole and sprinkle with soil. Then, if you water it, the potato will grow and should be ready for harvest. Kelsey objected to the protagonist. "No, it is clear that potatoes cannot grow right away. Potatoes of course grow quickly, but it takes 3 or 4 months for this." At that moment, potato sprouts appeared next to Kelsey's leg. Kelsey was very surprised. The potato was growing right before his eyes. In a matter of seconds, the potatoes grew, blossomed, and turned yellow. The protagonist was delighted to see them and said that since stems and leaves had turned yellow, it must be time to harvest. Kelsey couldn't believe it, but how could that be? The protagonist crouched down and began to pull out the potatoes. The bush came out with 5 potatoes. MC was happy, he had confidence, but he still felt relieved. Mercia congratulated Mr. Isagi. Kelsey still couldn't believe it. How was it possible to harvest potatoes on the same day? The protagonist told him that his surprise was justified. Now it was time to taste the potatoes. Mercia suggested that maybe they should make a simple sauté. The protagonist supported her. Since the weather was nice now, maybe they should cook outside? They pulled a table out into the yard and set the table. Mercia began cooking. First, she peeled the potatoes, then cut them. MC took out some kind of device from his bag. Kelsey asked what it was. The protagonist answered that it was a magical device that generated fire. Kelsey was surprised again. Generated fire? The protagonist confirmed this and showed that if you press the button like this, the fire will light. If you adjust the lever, you can change the strength of the fire at will. Kelsey said that he had heard that there are convenient things in the city, but a thing that can always easily cause fire, that's incredible. Isagi also made this thing himself? MC laughed and said that this is also the work of an alchemist to make such magical utensils. Meanwhile, Mercia approached the fire. She poured the chopped potatoes into the frying pan, added vegetable oil, and fried over medium heat. When a golden crust appears, you need to turn it over. Then cover the pan with a lid. Let it sit for about 4 minutes over low heat. Then divide into portions, and it's ready. Mercia loudly announced that the potato sauté is ready. The seasonings include oil, salt, and pepper. They can add all this to themselves at their own discretion. Kelsey was very happy, and his daughter prepared the food. They all sat down at the table and began to try. The protagonist said, "Yes, it is delicious." Mercia asked her father, and there are no questions about the taste, right? Her father could not come to his senses after everything. He said that the taste is much better than what is grown in their village. Also, it's weird, but it seems like there's energy boiling inside him. The protagonist thought, what should be expected from a beastman? Heightened perception. Isagi explained that in fact, this potato is improved. When you eat it, you get the effect of increasing vitality. Kelsey asked incredulously, "Is this possible?" MC replied that although he says so, it is still a small effect. In the meantime, the plates were already empty. Kelsey asked the protagonist, if people plant plants that MC improved with alchemy, then this potato will be able to grow even in this village? The protagonist confirmed his words, of course. Even if it doesn't work out right away, he'll still make it work out. Because that's his job. Kelsey was surprised and happy to hear this. He thought about it. Isagi continued to explain to him that in order to have a stable supply, MC would further expand the fields and grow other advanced plant varieties to be able to harvest a variety of crops. Kelsey decided that Isagi would make these lands fertile. He had the power to do so. And Kelsey said loudly, yes. He entrusts this matter to the protagonist. MC thanked Kelsey for his trust. Then he would gradually do it. The next day, many fields had already appeared around the protagonist's house. He was growing many useful things for the village. MC asked Mercia if he felt a little embarrassed. Hadn't he overdone it? She replied that he had overdone it a little. Previously in the palace, he had to grow plants in a limited area. Therefore, knowing that he had so much space at his disposal, he was so inspired that he overdid it. The protagonist asked Mercia what to do with all this amount. Of course, he could just somehow store everything in a magic bag, but they wouldn't have enough hands. They wouldn't have time to collect even half by the end of the harvest season. The girl asked him if it was possible to create another golem. The protagonist told her that he couldn't create another golem. Unfortunately, he didn't have any more magic stones. Then Mercia suggested asking her father and mother for help. She said that they would help them out. MC agreed with her. The girl asked him to wait for her a little while she went for help. The protagonist agreed again and said that for now he would work together with the golem. He stood up. Oh, my lower back hurts. Suddenly a scream was heard from behind. Nya, what is that? The protagonist turned around. Ah, Nea, good morning. Nea froze with a surprised face and said, after all, in their village, there had never been such a big field. Isagi told her that they managed to cultivate it yesterday with the help of alchemy. She was surprised. Why? But it had only been 2 days since he came. Although it was strange that anything could grow on this soil at all, and the fact that it was time to harvest was also strange. Isagi cheerfully explained to her that it was all thanks to alchemy. She indignantly asked, does he have one answer for everything? A voice was heard from behind. Isagi is telling the truth, Nea. She saw who it was, Uncle Kelsey. He told her that he saw it with his own eyes yesterday. The crops that Isagi modified are growing even in this village. Nea was happy. If Uncle said so, then it was true. Isn't that cool? It turns out that they are currently harvesting? The protagonist confirmed this and said that he went a little overboard with the crops. Kelsey looked over the entire field and said, however, how much has grown? I didn't think that the field would grow so much in one day. The protagonist apologized and said that he had overdone it in his joy. Kelsey asked him not to worry about it. It was wonderful that their village, suffering from food shortages, had such a bountiful harvest. Mercia's mother said that their village had never seen such a rich harvest before. She was even a little excited. Nia said that she would also help with the harvest. Kelsey asked, come on, Isagi, shall we begin? And everyone began to harvest. They collected pumpkins, squash, cauliflower, radishes, eggplants, and many other things. Suddenly, Nia asked Isagi if she could try a tomato. He happily allowed it. Nia was delighted. Hooray! She bit into it. She did not understand the taste and asked, what is it? Very tasty. It is so different from the tomatoes she knows. The protagonist answered, these tomatoes not only have accelerated growth, but also have increased sugar content. Nia was surprised. Wow, that's cool. Mercia came up to them and asked, it looks like the two of them are having a lot of fun? The protagonist looked at her in surprise. Mercia? She said she wanted to try too. The protagonist was happy. Yes, please. Mercia also took a bite of the tomato. Nia came up to her and whispered a question in her ear. Mercy, are you suddenly acting cute? Mercy got angry at her and screamed, Nia! Nia started running away from her. Mercia ran after her screaming, wait! Nia ran and screamed. Nia got angry. Isagi looked at them and thought, these two get along well. 3 days later, the protagonist informed everyone that the harvest was over. He was really grateful to everyone for their help. Kelsey asked him, by the way, what is MC going to do with the harvest? The protagonist replied that he was going to give it to the villagers. Otherwise, if he kept it all in the magic bag like that, the bag would be completely full. Mercia's mother asked, then, how about having a banquet? The protagonist was surprised. A banquet? She confirmed it and said to treat everyone to dishes prepared from the harvest from MC's field. This way, everyone would get to know Isagi and it would be easier to live together. The protagonist asked her again in surprise, but isn't a banquet troublesome? Preparations and all that. Mercia hurried to explain to MC that although it was called a banquet, it was a relaxed event, for which it was enough to call people to the central square and set up chairs and tables. The protagonist understood, so that's it. But if so, then fine. Kelsey summed it up, so we need to call people and get to preparations. There's a banquet tonight. The protagonist was happy at first, yes. But then he thought, what? You mean tonight? Everyone had gone off to prepare for the banquet. The protagonist was left alone with Mercia. He exhaled and asked, phew, everything is ready, right? They also need to hurry to the central square. Will everything go smoothly? Mercia was surprised by his worries. Mr. Isagi? He explained to her what was the matter. He was a human, and he had only just arrived here. Will people come? Mercia reassured him. Even though the banquet was scheduled for today, she thought everything would be fine. In any case, in the meantime, they arrived at the square. The girl continued to reassure him and explained that everything would go well, because there hadn't been a banquet like this for a long time. When they reached the square, the protagonist was surprised. So many people. Mercia's mother came to the table and told Isagi that she wanted to start cooking already, so he could help her if he brought the ingredients. The protagonist agreed fine. He opened his magic backpack and emptied its contents onto the table. Everyone was surprised. Wow, so many. Mercia asked, they haven't used so many fresh ingredients for a long time, have they? Nea asked confusedly, what should they cook now? Everyone was puzzled. After a while, the cooking was in full swing. They were boiling, frying, and mixing. The table was set. Kelsey, as the village elder, said, it's ready. He called Isagi and asked if he would come over for a minute. The protagonist agreed, yes. The whole village was gathered. Kelson began his speech. He thanked everyone for gathering here today. He explained to everyone that such an abundance of food in their food-poor village was due to the recently arrived Isagi, who grew this crop for them. The protagonist felt awkward. Was this an unplanned introduction? MC gathered his courage and said he was glad to meet them. His name is Isagi. He is an alchemist. He just came to this village the other day and doesn't know much. The protagonist asked everyone to be nice to him. Kelsey praised MC for his speech. Isagi added, there are still a lot of ingredients, so please, everyone can eat as much as they want. Kelsey shouted, well, let's welcome the new villager and drink to it. All the villagers supported him, bottoms up. The protagonist walked between the tables and could not find a seat. What? No seats. Mercia called Mr. Isagi and said that there was an empty seat next to her. She showed the protagonist a plate and said that she put a portion for him. He thanked her for it. He was happy. Pot au feu with vegetables. MC tried it, the sweetness of carrots and onions and the spicy taste of black pepper. He said, delicious. The protagonist ate potatoes, mushrooms, sausages, and a bunch of other ingredients. Nia was happy. She said that she hadn't eaten such a rich vegetable soup for a long time. Mercia asked her, because of constant savings, they often even had to use vegetable peelings, right? Nia said besides, she was happy that there was so much food on the table. However, when the banquet was over, they would all return to their meager food. The protagonist looked at her and was indignant. Why was she saying such a thing in the middle of a banquet? She answered him. But it's true. The protagonist thought nothing can be done about the fact that such thoughts come to people's minds. Now the level of food security in each house is not improving. The protagonist stood up and said, please be calm. He told everyone that even they would be able to grow crops that he had selectively bred. All this grows well even in depleted soil. Everything he makes is resistant to cold and viruses. He would distribute the seeds of these crops to all of them. Nea stood up and asked, does that mean she could do it too? He confirmed, of course. If she took good care of them, she could grow them too. One of the people said in surprise he felt like he was in a dream. But the protagonist had just arrived in the village. Why was he doing so much for them? Mercia called out to Lord Isagi. He stood and looked at the villagers. Isagi decided to tell the story of his life. He said that he was abandoned in front of a church in the imperial capital as a baby. The villager was surprised that the protagonist was an orphan. Isagi said that he had fought for the meager food they were given. He had lived in the throes of hunger, so he knew what it was like to be underfed. He asked, didn't every one of them want to eat delicious food to their fill? The villagers listened attentively. The boy apologized to Isagi for expressing his doubts about him. MC replied that he would have doubts in his place too. The guy said, if it's not too much trouble for the protagonist, could he share his seeds with him? If there's a lot of food on his dinner table, he wants to try growing crops too. All the villagers started shouting that they also want to try their hand at farming. After all, the resources of the mountains and forests are limited. Mercia asked the villagers to calm down. Isagi said that he has a lot of seeds and he will share them with everyone. No matter how strong a person is, no matter how outstanding he is, even after becoming an alchemist, he continued his research in the food field. If you eat poorly, your heart will harden, you will forget why you live. Everyone is equal in the face of hunger, so that more people can fight hunger. In that case, he would like to further develop farming. And now, if the villagers take up farming, the food situation in the village should improve significantly. The headman shouted to make this village more prosperous. To the bottom for a new hope for the village of Polmenia. All the residents supported the toast and shouted, to the bottom. Empire of Remoris, Castle of Remoris. Garius reported that the production of magical weapons and items has increased this month. Prince Wace Stravancia Remoris, the first in line to the throne. The prince asked Garius that there was no report from Isagi this month. What was he doing? Garius wondered why the prince remembered that impudent commoner. He told the prince that he fired that parasite commoner. The prince asked, for what? Garius replied that the task of an alchemist in the empire is to make magical tools and items for military needs. He did none of this except for the bare minimum, and only messed around in the ground. The prince called the chief of the alchemists a fool. He asked if Garius understood what he had done. The prince said that they had hoped that the crops that Isagi had bred would be able to remedy the dire situation with the food shortage in the empire. So the prince entrusted Isagi with solving the food situation, and after discussing it with the others, he increased the military budget even more. The prince sternly asked what he should do with it. Garius tried to justify himself by saying that the stupid Isagi with his research was only getting in the way. The prince asked what Garius even saw in his subordinates. He called him a talentless person. The prince said to immediately provide an alternative to food production, or else his head would be cut off, and ordered Isagi to be returned to the village. The old granny said that it was all thanks to Isagi. She never thought that crops would grow on such soil. Isagi replied that the main thing was that the villagers were happy. Thanks to the fact that they distributed the seeds of selectively bred crops to the villagers, an agricultural boom occurred in the village. Mercia said that if everything went smoothly, they would be able to reap a large harvest. The protagonist agreed with these words, but he thought that at this rate, problems could arise. Mercia asked what the protagonist was worried about. He replied that the fertilizer they were using now was obtained by improving the imperial fertilizer. In general, at this rate, it might run out in a few years. Therefore, fertilizer that could be produced in this village was needed. There was an option to buy imperial fertilizer, but it was best to make fertilizer from the village's raw materials. Mercia reasoned that if she constantly received fertilizer from the protagonist's pocket, it would not nip the problem in the bud. The protagonist said that first they needed to collect the fertilizer that was used in this village. Mercia replied, "I obey." She would ask the peasant families she knew and ask them to share their fertilizer. Isagi was surprised that there were only 3 types of fertilizer. That was not enough for research. Mercia said that because of the poor soil, few people practice agriculture. The protagonist said that this was enough for the basis. But to make a better fertilizer, he needed raw materials that contained a little more magical power inherent in this village. Mercia smiled and said that then they should go to the forest. Isagi asked again, "To the forest?" She explained that in the forest, they would definitely be able to collect natural materials that were only there. The protagonist thought that it seemed that only there they would find what they needed. He said that he was going there and back. Mercia replied that she would go too. Isagi was surprised. She said that she had often gone to the forest before, and with a guide, the collection would be calmer. Isagi replied that she would certainly help him, but was the forest dangerous? Mercia held the mop tightly in her hand and told the protagonist to be calm. Isagi asked how this related to physical safety. Mercia replied that the maids needed fighting power to protect their master. The protagonist was surprised. They walked through the forest and looked for the necessary materials. The protagonist thought about the fact that the flora was slightly different from that of the Empire. Could it be because this was the Beast Kingdom? Mercia replied that in nature there was a fierce struggle for survival. Animals and plants evolve faster themselves. Isagi noticed the fruit. He wondered it was a tree fruit in the shape of a star. Mercia said that if you touched it, acid would come out of it. The protagonist was surprised. Is that so? He said that an accurate assessment should be made. Mercia said that sometimes dangerous plants can be found in nature. Isagi used the alchemist's ability to conduct an examination of matter. Carambola is a plant that grows in the forest in the southern part of the Beast Kingdom. If you squeeze it, it will splash out the acid it contains. If the acid gets on your skin, you should immediately wash it with water and start treating it. It's a dangerous plant. Mercia asked how to approach it. Isagi replied that he wanted to collect the plant. It could be used as a raw material for the acid solution and the weeding solution. She offered to help. The protagonist thanked her for this. He quietly cut the plant with scissors, lightly pierced the carambola with a needle, and collected the acid solution in a test tube. He put the plant itself in a magic bag. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and said that collecting was fun. Mercia asked if the Empire didn't allow this. Isagi replied that it was. They always said that collecting materials was best left to knights and adventurers. But in reality, he was dealing with the actual collection of materials. Suddenly, Mercia called out to the protagonist. A huge boar came out of the forest. The protagonist asked Mercia if it was a monster. She replied that it was a demon. It had a violent temper and attacked quickly with its fangs. The demon let out a menacing roar. The protagonist wondered what to do. Mercia asked to leave it to her. Isagi was surprised. The demon stamped his hoof and chose a target. Mercia stood in front of it and was ready to accept the fight. The demon rushed to attack. It twisted its muzzle because there were 2 targets. Mercia jumped high into the air and jumped over the demon. It received a powerful blow from behind with a hand, and then with both legs. The last blow to the head knocked the demon to the ground. The protagonist was surprised. How could she do that with 1 blow? Mercia replied that she could not allow him to have unnecessary trouble. Marcia's combat power was much higher than the usual norm. Isagi knew that the physical abilities of beastmen were much higher than those of ordinary people. He asked her if she really was just a servant. Mercia answered, indeed. But as a beastman, she could serve in the imperial castle because she had such fighting power. The protagonist joked that this was why she had so many different night jobs. Mercia replied that yes. She could see well at night, and her appearance as a maid easily misled bandits. Isagi thought that in an empire where beastmen were looked down upon, it was natural to demand more. Mercia said that she had been persistently persuaded to take up dark work lately, so she was glad that she was able to quit at the same time as him. The protagonist asked, "Dark work?" He said that a person like him could live peacefully in the castle thanks to her and the rest of the guards. He smiled and thanked her. Mercia replied that it was natural, because night guards were the duties of servants. Asagi said that he thought that was the job of knights. The thought occurred to him that there should be a magic stone in the demon's body. Mercia asked again, "A magic stone?" He said that the magic power that monsters get from the atmosphere and predation is stored in a magic stone. Alchemists use magic stones to create various items. Mercia replied that she understood. He felt the flow of magic power with his fingers and said, "Perhaps here?" He took a blade from his magic bag and cut the monster open. They were surprised when they found a magic stone. Isagi said that the stone has high-quality magic power. This monster's quite large prey. Mercia said that in this forest, it is an average monster. MC was surprised. In the capital of the empire, they rarely keep monsters that do not fit in the palm of your hand, but here it is a common size. Asagi asked Mercia if demons often appear in the vicinity of the village. She replied that if the number of monsters is not periodically reduced, then a whole herd will come to the village. Asagi wondered if he could collect many magic stones of this level. Perhaps it is possible. He suggested making raw materials for fertilizer from magic stones. It will be much faster than making it from a material that has magical power. Mercia suggested collecting a lot of magic stones. The protagonist agreed and suggested looking for the next monster. Mercia replied that before that, since demon meat is very tasty, she would like to take it with her. Isagi apologized and said that he was only thinking about materials. She asked to give her some time. Everything here was not like in the Imperial Castle. In order to survive, you need to look for and get your own food. As before, he only stocks up on materials and makes what is asked. Isagi asked Mercia if she would teach him how to cut up a carcass. She looked at him in surprise and answered, if he likes it. The protagonist was holding a bag full of magic stones. Mercia asked if it was time for them to return to the village. Isagi replied that these magic stones were enough to make fertilizer. He noticed that the quality of the ground under his feet was gradually changing. He asked if it was because they had gone deep into the forest. Isagi asked for time to explore the area further. He pointed to the mountain and asked if there was ore there. Mercia replied that it was indeed mined there, but it would take a long time if they went after it now. Isagi replied that everything was fine. He would use alchemy to figure out where the ore deposits were approximately located. If there was ore there, he would be able to make more golems and buildings. They set off to search for ore. The protagonist carefully walked along the cliff. Mercia asked if he was okay. Isagi replied in a trembling voice that he was fine. Beads of sweat were rolling down his face. He noticed that Mercia was moving nimbly in her maid uniform. She nimbly moved from ledge to ledge. After some time, Mercia said that she had found an underground passage. Isagi was surprised. Had they really made it? He asked if the passage was quite old. Mercia replied that it had been dug a long time ago and was wearing out. Isagi touched the support beam and said that strengthening the earth by burning prevents the ceiling and walls from collapsing. He asked if he could strengthen the worn-out part. Mercia said of course. He touched the wood again and used magic. After the strengthening procedure, Mercia said that she would lead him inside. They went deeper into the cave. The protagonist noticed that it had become dark. He remembered that the beastmen saw better in the dark, so they did not notice her. Mercia apologized for not preparing a lamp. Isagi took a lamp from his bag and lit it. He suggested that they move forward, lighting the way with the lamp. Mercia said that she would carry the magical device, and Mr. Isagi would focus on searching for ore. He thanked her for her help. They slowly made their way into the dungeon. He examined level after level with magic. And then, touching the wall, he said that there were large deposits of ore here. Mercia picked up a pickaxe and said that she would dig everything up. The protagonist replied that there was no need for that. If one could strengthen the properties of matter by sending a stream of magical power through it using alchemy, then one could also make matter more fragile. If one applied force to a structurally weak spot, then it could be destroyed. He asked to collect ore. Mercia obediently complied. Isagi continued to crush matter and extract more ore. He said that this was how he aimed and hit the places where the ore was deposited. Mercia obediently put everything in bags. The protagonist walked along the wall, moving his hand and ore poured out of it. Mercia asked to slow down because her feet were covered with ore. The protagonist apologized. He said that the collected ore would be sorted and extracted on the spot. Mercia replied, "I listen and obey." They sat down and began to sort. Iron ore, copper ore, lead, magic ore, there was some gold and precious stones. As the protagonist expected, there was no adamantite and mithril. Mercia laughed and said that such a drilling technology would be in great demand in various mines. Isagi said that alchemists were sent to the washing chambers. But since it was hard to live there, among the nobility it was equated to hard labor. In his case, he was indeed sent there often. After sorting, they began to process the ore. Isagi used magic power and a pile of ore turned into ingots. Isagi suggested speeding up. Mercia agreed. After finishing the work, the protagonist suggested going home. Mercia asked if they had mined a lot of ore. Isagi replied that many things could be made from it. He would increase the number of golems, and he would be able to make more agricultural tools. But most importantly, he would be able to create a workshop. Mercia asked again, a workshop? Isagi replied, yes. If the alchemical processing failed, the building could explode due to the explosion. A strong odor could be released during the processing, so he wanted a workshop separate from the house. Mercia offered to help build the workshop. Isagi replied that he could handle it himself. He said that the second harvest season had come, so she would help him more if she helped with the field work. Mercia obediently agreed and went to the field. Isagi hurried to start work. First, he decided on the size of the workshop. He dreamed of a very large workshop, but since it would be difficult to maintain, it was better to refrain from this idea. There was no need to separate the rooms either. A workspace and a storeroom would be enough. He marked everything out on the ground with sticks and ropes. He chose wood as the material, as in building a house, and bricks to increase the strength of the building. Next, he needed to prepare the mortar. He poured cement and sand into a box in a ratio of 1:3. He mixed the mixture using the alchemical method until it was homogeneous. He made a depression in the center and slowly poured in water and mixed again. When the lumps dissolved and the mixture thickened, the mortar was ready. Next, he laid out bricks along the outer wall and covered them with cement. On top of that, more bricks and more cement. This method was repeated row after row. He had only laid out the brick walls, but it was already looking good. Then he started on the interior decoration. Mercia came and asked how the workshop was going. She was very surprised when she saw the finished stone building. The protagonist said that this is what he needed. Now it definitely looked like an alchemist's workshop. Mercia knocked on the door and asked if she could come in. Isagi told her to come in. There was already furniture and equipment for work inside. Isagi said that he is just doing interior design. Mercia said that the walls of the house were beautiful, not only on the outside, but also on the inside. MC was glad that she liked it. He said that by changing the proportion of tree resin, he lowered the brightness of the walls and reduced the glare. When he did this, the reflectivity of the light changed, and the color became warm and not too dazzling. In addition, he wanted to create an antique atmosphere, and laid the walls only with bricks. Mercia congratulated him that he finally had a proper workshop. Isagi thanked her. He said that now he could do research as much as he wanted. Mercia asked if he would mind if she put in the furniture. Isagi asked if she could, to put a bed for him to take a nap. Mercia refused. Isagi asked why. She explained that if she put a bed here, he would sleep here all the time instead of going home. The protagonist objected. Mercia replied that he could be angry with her, but she would not do so, and would not give in to this request. She knew him inside and out. Isagi tried to persuade her to put the sofa, but Mercia refused again. She said that it was for the sake of a healthy lifestyle, to sleep only in the house, okay? The protagonist replied that he understood everything, but asked to make everything more comfortable right away. Mercia replied that she would help. In order to make fertilizer suitable for this land, they collected materials from the forests and mines, and today, they will finally make fertilizer. First, they will need 3 types of fertilizers that were originally used in Polmenia village, right? What is the result of enhancing the properties? Mercia hesitated about this. After all, it is much inferior to the fertilizer produced by the Empire. Detailed data on the progress is collected in this document. Mercia handed this document to the protagonist. Isagi thought about it. Only the current fertilizer has a limit. He asked, after all, it would probably be better to crossbreed with other raw materials? The girl asked in response, in that case, it seems like it will take a lot of time? The protagonist thought for a while and said, if you start from scratch, then it may take several years, but here, there is data collected in the Empire. In addition, they have enough magic stones of excellent quality. Isagi showed her the stone. The girl asked, they got it from a monster in the forest, but is it really that good quality? MC answered her, in the Empire, one of these costs 20 silver coins. Mercia was surprised, wow, it is so expensive. She took the stone in her hands and said, here such a stone usually costs 1 silver coin. The protagonist was surprised and asked her if such a magic stone was a common thing here. She confirmed his guess, right, in this area she thinks everyone has one. The protagonist was even more surprised, is that so? In any case, he will definitely make a high-quality fertilizer out of this magic stone. MC suggested that Mercia add the magic stone to the fertilizer and asked her to prepare pots for the experiment. She agreed and went to do it. The protagonist continued, so first the magic power needs to be tidied up. In order for the disordered magic power contained in the magic stone to be easier to process, he will bring it into balance. Next, he needed to get rid of the foreign impurities in the stone, which he did. There, it is ready. Meanwhile, Mercia brought the pots. She saw the beauty that the protagonist created and asked, "The processed magic stone is really beautiful, isn't it? This one emits a pure purple glow." The protagonist agreed with her. Yes, in the empire among the aristocrats, there were people who wore magic stones as jewelry. The girl asked how else these magic stones could be used. The protagonist did not answer her question. He said that the stone should be crushed and mixed with fertilizer. He apologized to her for having to break such beauty that she liked. She answered as if nothing had happened, that everything is fine. Since the magic stone is just a material, she will not worry. Mercia asked, "She will bring more pots, okay?" MC agreed with her. Mercia left with a sad face. Isagi thought, if she was so disappointed, maybe next time he should give her some jewelry made of magic stone? Then he said, there is another reason why he continues. Densely growing grass with a strong reproductive factor. Terraria with a strong resistance factor to insect damage, increasing the decomposition of genjid. Then all this must be mixed with various materials that they collected in the forest. The experimental sample of fertilizer is ready. Mercia suggested to test it right away. The protagonist wrote the number 001 on the pot and poured soil into the pot. Then he planted the selectively bred arugula seed there, covered it with soil, and watered it. The arugula instantly grew to enormous sizes. The protagonist and Mercia were surprised. Amazing growth. The arugula continued to grow and grow. Mercia whispered, "Too amazing growth." She asked the protagonist, "Is it okay if a little more and the walls and ceiling will collapse?" The protagonist used magic and stopped the plant's growth. He said it was dangerous. Out of curiosity, he almost destroyed the workshop. Mercia asked, "They couldn't even imagine such growth, could they? Was the factor of densely growing grass really that strong?" The protagonist answered, "Of course, it was also possible, but he thought there was also a synergy effect due to the magic power of good quality." He thought, if that's the case, maybe he should try to extract the magic power of the stone? Besides, it seems there's a need to choose a suitable magic stone. He also wants to see the result of mixing the raw materials to create the most suitable fertilizer. All that remains is to try all of these one by one. He turned to Mercia and said that this work would definitely not be easy, but that he had to try his best. Mercia agreed with him, of course. She hoped that she would be useful. They continued their experiments. The same thing happened with the second pot as with the first. In pot number 73, something grew and immediately withered. At some point, they managed to get a product, but it quickly withered. Mercia continued to stick numbers on the pots, and it was already number 207. The protagonist tried to calculate the formula on paper. He worked long and hard. He thought that this kind of work, when the two of them persistently repeat experiments on improvement, reminded him of the time when they lived in the Empire. Ah, a little nostalgia. It was time for the next experiment. Mercia asked, "So we plant the pepper seed, right?" He confirmed it. She said that she waters it then. It was pot 252. The pepper quickly grew and bore fruit. They realized that the growth had stopped. The protagonist noted that the stem and leaves showed no abnormal growth. Mercia agreed and said that it could be confirmed that the result was the same as the fertilizer from the Empire. This meant that everything had worked. The protagonist was happy. It was done. It worked. It took 3 weeks of dedicated work. Mercia agreed and said that they were able to create the fertilizer using only the village's materials. This meant that they would no longer have a problem with the lack of fertilizer, right? MC agreed with her. The girl said that now the village's agriculture was also safe. But this time, he did not agree with her. No, because there were no other alchemists besides him. If something happened to him, production might stop. Mercia wondered, what if we give the recipe to the city's alchemists so that they could make fertilizer for everyone? Isagi thought about it and said that perhaps the alchemists would not be able to repeat this due to their lack of skill. She asked again, then maybe he should come up with an easier recipe. The protagonist thought, I wonder how skilled the city's alchemists are. He looked at the pepper pot and said that he would think about such complex things later. Some time had passed since then. One day, Isagi and Mercia were having dinner at home. He thanked her for the food as usual and asked if the vegetables they were treated to were delicious. Right? Mercia agreed, indeed. MC said that he would also help her wash the dishes. She thanked him for that. The protagonist thought, when he and Mercia were doing something together, sometimes the conversation would turn into an awkward pause. However, for some reason, he did not feel any awkwardness. He decided to tell her. He thought that when they stood next to each other like this and did household chores, they looked like a married couple. Didn't they? The girl was scared. A married couple? But their conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. And a voice was heard. Is Alchemist Isagi home? The protagonist said he would open the door and asked Mercia to continue washing the dishes. He noticed how her face changed and asked, did she seem terribly dissatisfied with something? She answered dryly, everything is fine. The protagonist wondered, does she really dislike washing the dishes that much? There was a knock on the door again. MC said he was already on his way. He opened the door and saw no one in front of him. What? No one? A voice came out and said, below. Even lower. He tilted his head and saw a beastman dog standing in front of him. MC was surprised. Was it a child? The beastman said, allow me to introduce myself. Her name is Konya. She is from the wonderful trading company. She came for important negotiations with him, Mr. Isagi. The protagonist was surprised. Negotiations? With him? She confirmed. That's right. Can she discuss the details of the matter in his house? He agreed. Please come to the reception area. The girl apologized. Sorry for the intrusion. She had a huge backpack on her shoulders that didn't fit through the door. She tried to squeeze through, but in vain. The protagonist told her, after all, this backpack wouldn't fit. Konya left the backpack outside. She entered and sat down on a chair. Sorry for the inconvenience. Again, Mr. Isagi. Mercia entered the room. Konya saw her and asked the protagonist, is this your wife? Mercia was surprised by the question. The protagonist turned to Konya and said, this girl's name is Mercia. She's a maid. Mercia added, and by the way, she's the daughter of the village chief. Konya scratched the back of her head. I apologize. Mercia calmed her down and said, don't worry, she'll make some tea now. Okay? The protagonist saw Mercia's change of mood and thought, she seemed to be in a bad mood recently. A woman's heart is quite a mystery. Meanwhile, Mercia brought tea. Konya tasted it and said she understood the bitterness and also felt a barely noticeable sweetness, quite tasty. She asked Mercia, what did she use? Mercia answered that she brewed wolfberry leaves, collected in the nearby forest. Konya was happy. Wolfberry leaves. Suddenly, Konya had a notebook with a pen in her hands and she wrote down, if wolfberry leaves are brewed, then such a great taste will come out. The protagonist thought and was surprised where Konya got the notebook from. The protagonist whispered to Mercia, what kind of trading company Wonderful is this? Wonderful is an outstanding large trading company even in the kingdom of animals. This company has not only the main office in the royal capital but also branches in various cities. All the employees there are half humans, half dogs. The protagonist asked, quite a big company, right? And he himself thought, why did a businesswoman from such a large company come to him? At this time, Konya was writing something in her notebook. She apologized to them for waiting. In fact, she recently noticed that the amount of high-quality crops in the markets has increased dramatically. These crops have a high growth rate, and the harvest can be collected regardless of the season. Moreover, it tastes much better than the crops that were previously grown in the Beast Kingdom. Her attempts to give away the origin of this amazing crop led her straight to Polmenia. The protagonist realized that since the village's crop yields have increased recently, the merchants must have gone to other villages to trade. So Konya learned that he was the source of the increased crop, right? Konya happily confirmed this, right. The only strange thing is that Polmenia crops were grown in other villages as well, but they could not achieve the same result. The protagonist agreed with her and said that this was quite natural. Konya was surprised. What? Isagi explained that he bred these crops using alchemy specifically for the soil of this area. Although it is easy to grow, he thinks that achieving such quality is problematic. Konya got it. Soil. That's it. She said that it was amazing that he was using alchemy for agriculture. Then she asked, is he breeding crops with the power of alchemy, right? The protagonist confirmed her words. That's right. And he thought to himself, as expected of a businesswoman of a large trading company, she is both quick-witted and has a developed imagination. Konya abruptly closed her notebook, and now to the main topic. She asked the protagonist if he could sell the harvest to the wonderful trading company wholesale on a regular basis. Isagi thought, that's right. Unfortunately, the resources that can be collected in the vicinity of the village are not unlimited. Connections with a large trading company are important. MC told her that he doesn't mind, but he has a condition. Konya replied that she is listening to him carefully. The protagonist explained to her that he is an alchemist. If he does not have the materials, then creation is impossible. He needs her to deliver the desired materials on a priority basis. Konya jumped up and answered happily, no problem. With the capabilities of the wonderful trading company, there are no materials they can't get from the Beast Kingdom. The protagonist wondered, then what about materials outside the Empire? Konya said sadly, but she can't guarantee that. The protagonist thought, really? Then there are no questions. Konya reported, thank you. Then she asked, by the way, how much can the protagonist stably sell wholesale? MC replied that Mercia could tell her everything about that. Mercia took out her report papers and showed them to Konya. The current harvest volume is like this. Konya looked at it in surprise. The weekly yield. Then she asked, how much of the harvest will they be able to supply? Mercia, with pride in her voice, said that nothing is impossible for Mr. Isagi's improved varieties. In other words, the harvest volume will be equal to the supply volume. Konya was surprised. Wow, the ability to send cargo every week, the speed is amazing. Is there any way to increase the supply volume a little more? The protagonist answered, it is difficult to increase more than this. Right now his only workforce is Golem, himself, and Mercia. If they work even harder in the fields, there will be no more strength left for anything. Koni thought, so that's how it is. Isagi began to calculate in his mind, selection of varieties, production of a different type of fertilizer, and also the manufacture of magical tools. Yes, he needs to do a lot. It's still too early to devote himself to fieldwork like a real farmer. Koni asked the protagonist, in that case, why not just hire people to manage the fields? Isagi and Mercia were surprised. Hired people? The thought flashed through MC's mind. Was that possible? He wondered why such a simple thought hadn't occurred to him. Maybe because he was one of those who were forced to work until exhaustion? Mercia supported Koni's train of thought. Exactly. Perhaps it would be better for Mr. Isagi to focus on alchemy, entrusting the fields to others, as Koni said. The businesswoman also supported her. That's right. The protagonist agreed with her. Yes, that's what we'll do. And the free land will need to be turned into a large field. Koni was surprised. A large field, but that will be a farm, right? The protagonist was happy. A whole farm. That sounds good. He will grow a lot of crops on a huge farm and send it. Wow. Koni was also happy, and the wonderful trading company will sell this everywhere. Wow. MC said, of course, they will all benefit greatly. Koni extended her hand to shake and said, then she wishes for his mega farm to prosper. Protagonist took her hand and said that he was looking forward to their cooperation. The businesswoman happily responded to him, and in return, Koni left his house. Well past midnight, the protagonist sat in his office and thought about what to do with the staff. Hire contract workers from the wonderful trading company? No, he should first try to recruit workers in the village. He felt that if there were not enough, he would have to ask someone. Mercia brought him tea. She understood what he was thinking about. Mercia called him by name to distract him a little. MC asked her, the villagers, would they respond to the recruitment ad as usual? The food situation in the village had improved noticeably lately. Will there be people willing to work on the farm now, even though they can feed themselves? Mercia reassured him, of course there will be. After all the villagers feel great gratitude towards him. He was surprised. Oh, so that's how it is. MC explained. He wants the people who will work on the farm to feel that it is beneficial for them. Mercia giggled. Lord Isagi has a kind heart, doesn't he? The protagonist asked her. Did she think so? Mercia continued, and as for the benefit, how about creating varieties that he hasn't given out to the villagers yet? It would be great to create varieties that can only be bred here, and if the villagers can take them for themselves, they will certainly be happy. The protagonist was happy, a great idea. He suggested planting, for example, fruits like apples and bananas. Mercia asked, what about grapes? The protagonist apologized to her and said that grapes are still in the development stage. He asked her, she really likes grapes, right? Mercia thought about it and asked him to let her know when he succeeded in perfecting the grapes. He said that as soon as he succeeded, he would let her know right away. He thought, so where should he start? 5 workers are needed. While the transaction volume and benefit are unclear, he needs to set a goal. Try working with a small group of people. Later, there is enough work and the main income will increase. Mercia asked if she could go to her father for permission to recruit people. The protagonist let her go. Okay. Mercia left, and he continued to sit and think. If only everything would go smoothly, a large farm. After some time, the protagonist sat and thought. 5 days had already passed since he posted the recruitment ad. Mercia came running and shouted, Mr. Isagi, about recruitment. He jumped up and asked her how. How did it go? Did anyone respond? She replied that they had an influx of applications. The number of applications was more than 10 times the required number of workers. MC looked out the window. There was a long line. He was surprised. What? So many candidates. In front of everyone was Nea. She greeted Isagi and Mercieka. The protagonist asked her if she applied too? Nea answered, of course. It sounds pretty funny. And the salary, it's good, right? Nea asked the protagonist if there weren't too many people. He agreed with her, and that's true. In fact, he wants to hire all of them, but he has no choice but to narrow down the number of candidates by holding an interview. Nea turned to him and asked, aren't they friends? Mercia pushed Nea aside and said that the interview was conducted without exceptions, so she would have to stand in line. Naya was indignant, but Mercia, she grabbed her by the scruff of the neck and she shouted that it was a joke and asked not to be angry with her and not to drop her. At this time, Isagi was thinking. However, he didn't imagine that there would be so many people who wanted to work on his farm. He addressed the people with a speech. Ladies and gentlemen, sorry for the wait. Let's begin the interview, shall we? He sat on a chair at the table and spoke to each person who came personally. Thus, the protagonist chose 5 people to work. The next morning, they came to work. Among them was Nea. She told everyone that the fact that they were called here today meant that they were accepted. Great, right? The protagonist answered her. It turns out so. Nea happily hugged Mercia. MC explained that he thought many of them already knew each other. but just in case, he asked everyone to introduce themselves. The first was Nea. She introduced herself and said that she used to help her grandfather with work in the fields, and she was pleased to meet everyone. The protagonist remembered that last time Nea had been a master at helping with dust work, and that she could be relied upon for future work. Then a guy introduced himself. His name was Rhodes. He was the son of a beekeeper. He was confident in his endurance and strength. Isagi realized that Rhodes had no experience in farming, but it seemed that he could easily be trusted with physical work. The third girl introduced herself. Her name was Nora. She helped her father on a small farm and with the accounting at her mother's general store. Mercia realized that Nora was inferior in physical strength to other workers, but she was good at counting and seemed to be good at small tasks and office work. The fourth guy introduced himself. His name was Ricardo. He was engaged in hunting. He does a little work in the field, using the seeds that Isagi gave him. MC remembered, and Ricardo planted more of all the villagers in his seeds than anyone else. It seems that he has an idea of how to work on a farm. The fifth was Ragmunt. He said that he had as much experience in farming as Ricardo. He asked the protagonist if he really wanted to hire him, even though he said such rude words during the banquet. Isagi still wanted to do it. The protagonist confirmed and said that this was why he wanted to hire Ragmunt. He would probably be able to ask the protagonist questions without embarrassment. Ragmunt was surprised. Was that it? He asked the MC for permission to directly ask about everything. Isagi agreed with this. Then Mercia began to explain to everyone what to do. So now she is asking for help in harvesting, okay? Ricardo was inspired. Good, he is good at harvesting. Nia asked what needs to be harvested. Mercia looked at her documentation and said, today's list includes tomatoes, cucumbers, eggplants, bell peppers, and Chinese cabbage. Nia asked, Mercy, isn't it too much to pick? Mercia answered calmly, that's why she wants them to help her and the protagonist. The work is hard, but the pay is high. Besides, they don't mind if the workers take some of the harvest with them, so let's make an effort. Nea cheerfully said that she would probably hurry then. Mercia turned to Mr. Isagi and asked him to focus on working in the workshop. She asked him to entrust the rest to her. Everything will be fine. The protagonist agreed with her. She took everyone to work in the field and gave everyone a working tool. Mercia explained to everyone what and how to do. The workers coped with their duties, and the finished harvest was sent to the warehouse. At this time, the protagonist worked in his workshop. He reasoned with himself, no, after all, the fruit still needs time to ripen. The strawberries, apples, and bananas were successful, but in order to grow them on a large farm, he wanted to increase the number of varieties a little more. Then it seemed he would need to expand the workshop. MC was at a loss. He saw Mercia working through the window. He thought she was helping him cope with the work around the house, the workshop, and finally even the farm. She always tries so hard. He remembered how she asked about the grapes. MC decided that it might take a long time to grow grapes, but he would try to do it. Isagi worked in the lab until the early morning. He thought, what is the data for today? Everyone should wake up soon. The protagonist thought about the guys. Since everyone had a hard time on the first day, couldn't he thank them somehow? A thought flashed through his mind. Right. There is still some time. Let's make a magic tool. When he was in the castle, he worked on writing a plan for magical instruments in his free time. He found these documents. This one contained only sketches, and there are not enough materials, so some ideas cannot even be implemented. But now it is worth trying. He leafed through the papers and found it. Here it is. After a while, everyone began to wake up. Mercia came and praised, good work, guys. Nea stretched and said how tired she was. Ragmunt said that he had not been this tired for a long time. Ricardo said that there was much more work than in his field. Rhodes noticed, but they managed to get a lot of vegetables. Ragmunt asked Nora, is she tired? Oh my. Nora answered, she is very tired. She exists only due to female energy. Ragmunt was surprised, really? Nora said, and this is almost every day. The protagonist entered their room and thanked everyone for their work. He asked them to sit down for now. MC said that he wanted to give his workers a special thing. Everyone was excited. Ooh, what's there? What? Isagi showed them. Trial mixer number 1. They were surprised. Nora asked, trial? Ricardo asked, mixer? The protagonist proudly answered, a new magic tool. The lower base contains a magic fragment without attributes. If you let a stream of magic power flow, the blade at the top will start to rotate. In general, if you put chopped fruits and water in the mixer, and let a stream of magic power flow, it will turn out very tasty. Nea screamed indignantly, chopping precious vegetables. The protagonist was surprised. What? He asked her to calm down and look at what happened. He happily said, apple juice is ready. Who wants to drink? Everyone shouted in turn, me. And me. Isagi poured a glass of juice for everyone. Nea tried it. Nya. What kind of delicious is this? Ricardo was delighted. Delicious. Rhodes liked the juice, such a rich apple sweetness. Ragmunt was surprised, but it was just an apple and water. The protagonist asked them to wait for him and said that he would make more now. First, he would wash the dishes, then he made more juice and said that this time, to make it easier to drink, he would add milk. He would make banana and strawberry milk for everyone. Nora picked up the filled glass. Well, let's get started. She tried the contents, and her eyes widened in surprise. The aroma and sweetness of strawberries are so bright. It spread throughout her body. She felt happiness. Today's fatigue seemed to have disappeared by hand. Ragmant tried it after Nora. Delicious. He said that he seemed to feel strength coming into him. Naya also tried the contents of her glass and said that this was the first time she drank such delicious juice. Ricardo said, "Wow, it seems that he is ready for battle tomorrow too." He suggested, "Let's harvest even more than today." Rhodes supported him. "Let's try." The protagonist said he was glad they liked it. Naya said it looked delicious. She also wanted to drink banana milk. MC said okay, but she needed to wash the bottle. He and Mercia went to wash the dishes. She praised him and said that as expected of him, he did everything right. Isagi was surprised. "Huh? What exactly?" She replied, "This must be his battle tactic. To get the workers hooked on delicious garden fruits so that they don't run away? He's good at the carrot and stick method." The protagonist laughed. Really, he never even thought about it. However, it would be great if they could have some fun working. Mercia agreed with him. MC handed her the filled glass. She was probably tired too and hadn't had a drink yet, right? He specially brought it for her. He suggested that she try it together before treating the others. They banged the glass against the glass to the bottom. Mercia asked Izagi to tidy up the crops as usual. The protagonist replied that he would go and have a look. It had been a month and a half since they started working on the farm. Thanks to the 5 workers and Mercia, the farm had finally reached a scale that could now be called truly large. The farm was divided into several parts: a wheat field area, a medicinal plantation area, a vegetable field area, an orchard area, and the village of Polminia itself. However, with such a scale, it was difficult to walk around. The protagonist came up with something. He asked Mercia to wait a little. She asked what happened. He replied that he had a good idea. He took out refined copper ingots from his magic backpack, used magic, and a horse was produced. Isagi said that the horse was a golem. He thought that it would be more convenient to have a means of transportation. Mercia thanked him and said that he had really helped her out. Isagi smiled and said that he would now create a second horse and they would ride together. But when he looked into the magic bag, he realized that there were not enough materials. Mercia thought about it and suggested that they ride together on one horse. They galloped and looked around the farm. MC said that it was dangerous to sit like that and that they should hold on tightly to him. Mercia agreed. She hesitantly took hold of Isagi's clothes and a blush appeared on her cheeks. The protagonist asked her if she was purring. Mercia pressed herself even closer to Isagi and replied that he imagined it. MC wondered what that sound was, and they galloped on. Having reached the place, the protagonist greeted Rhodes and wished him good morning. Rhodes greeted Mercia and Izagi in return. The protagonist said that he came to check on the company a little and improve things. He asked not to worry about him. Entering the greenhouses, he realized that Pramino House was able to properly control the temperature. They were covered with a translucent film and the temperature was controlled using magical equipment. Perhaps it was worth slowing down the growth rate of the plants here and letting them grow slowly. Isagi was examining the fruits and checking their sizes. Mercia said that Mr. Isagi was amazing. The protagonist turned and asked Mercia, did she say something? Mercia looked down and answered, no, nothing. She did not believe that he could create such a large farm in her village. Isagi suggested that they continue to inspect the orchard. Suddenly, Naya ran in and called out to them. She shouted that something had happened to the orchard. Isagi asked what had happened. Naya suggested that they just go. Mercia and Isagi exchanged glances. When they arrived at the field, they saw that the entire harvest had been destroyed. Mercia said that it was terrible. How could this happen? It was as if a storm had passed through the field, but it didn't look like a natural disaster. Isagi asked if this had happened yesterday. Naya answered, not at all. When she finished work yesterday, everything was fine. But when the morning came, everything was as it was. The protagonist asked if there were more spoiled fruits. Naya answered, no, as far as she knew, it was only here. Isagi thought about it. So it was only the watermelon field? Lucky, right? Naya started crying and asking for forgiveness. Mercia calmed her down and said that it wasn't her fault. Isagi said that it was impossible to observe the fields even at night. He suggested that they first collect the spoiled ones. Naya and Mercia agreed. They collected the spoiled watermelons in sacks. The protagonist carefully examined the damaged berries. He noticed claw marks inside and marks on the ground. Isagi was sure that it wasn't a human doing it. Mercia replied that she could smell the faint scent of wild animals. Naya called them to look at something. They found a black tuft of fur. Isagi thought it was a black wolf. These pack animals cause a lot of trouble. Naya was surprised that he realized this only by touching the fur. The protagonist answered that he was good at reading information about materials. Mercia said that the sweet scent of watermelons attracted wolves, and they came down from the mountains at night. Nea asked what if it happened again tonight. Mercia answered, of course. It was like bears that once tasted human flesh, attack again and devour their prey. Nea asked what they should do. The enemy is an agile monster with a strong attack. Fighting him in the wide area of the farm is a bad idea, so they will have to move from here. Isagi asked Nea to call Ragmont and Ricardo to defend the farm. But not at the cost of their lives. Nea answered, I understand. The protagonist ordered the golems to put their work aside and guard the farm first. He mounted his horse and said he would follow the tracks into the forest. Mercia said she would go with him. Isagi decided to pick up the pace a bit, so he asked Mercia to hold on tight. He rode confidently and quickly into the forest. Nea watched them go. Isagi asked Mercia if these were the same tracks on the ground. She answered yes. These tracks stretched deep into the forest, leaving a faint smell. They rode through the forest and wolves ran parallel to them. Somewhere in the forest, they dismounted and met a pack of wolves in a clearing. The protagonist thought it was a shadow wolf. He should have assumed this and brought his friends for reinforcements. He asked Mercia if she could handle the shadow wolf. She answered that she was only half confident in her strength. This enemy is so strong that even Mercia does not know if she can defeat it. According to the protagonist's battle tactics, helping would increase the chance of winning, but the black wolves would not allow this. Isagi quietly took out the pouch and decided to use the alchemist's magical power. But Mercia did not let him do this and said that she would buy time, that he ran away at that moment. She begged him to do it. Isagi answered sharply. No. He said that he could not leave her and run away. He knew perfectly well that it was irrational, but as the only man, he could not leave her alone. He said that she had always supported him, even after he was expelled from the imperial castle. Even if he got into trouble again, it did not mean that he could leave her. These words touched Mercia's soul. The wolves continued to circle around. One of them was surprised that people still had time to swear. He called them stupid creatures. Isagi was amazed at the wolf's high intelligence. He thought that the wolf not only spoke, but also understood speech. Perhaps he was just playing with them. If he didn't attack, there was a chance to come to an agreement. Isagi offered the wolf to make a deal. Mercia was surprised. The wolf was surprised that a human wanted to make a deal with the monsters. The protagonist answered, exactly. The conversation would be short and profitable. The wolf replied that he was interested. He could try, but if he got bored, he would kill and eat the protagonist. Isagi clenched his fists. He asked if they had eaten the watermelons that grew on his farm last night. The wolf asked what these fruits were called watermelons. He replied that they were going to come down from the mountains tonight and eat. Isagi replied that if the wolf continued to do this, there would be no more watermelons left. The wolf said that if they ran out, he would find others. The protagonist objected and said that he was the only one who grew watermelons. The wolf was surprised. He asked if the protagonist was going to demand something. If there are watermelons, they will disappear. Does he really want the wolves to leave? Isagi replied that this is not so. He said that they will provide the wolves with watermelons and other vegetables and fruits they grow, and in exchange, the wolves will guard his farm. The wolf was indignant that the protagonist would treat them like guard dogs. He took a fighting stance and his fur stood on end. Mercia was scared. Isagi replied that it depends on how they look at it. From the wolves' point of view, the farm can be seen as livestock that continues to produce delicious food. The wolf thought about it. The protagonist said that his farm has a lot of delicious food besides watermelons. Isagi looked into the eyes of the wolf leader and asked what he would say. Night, the forest. Ricardo, Ragmont, and Nea were walking around the farm with lanterns. A light appeared in the forest and the friends rushed to help. They were happy to see Mercius and Isagi. Ragmont said it was good that they had returned safe and sound. The protagonist apologized to the assistants and said that the golem's horse had broken down and they had been delayed. Nea asked if they were injured. Isagi smiled and said that everything was fine. The assistants were happy that they were safe and sound. Nea asked if they had been able to pacify the black wolves. Isagi replied that he had wanted to be heard calmly. One of the assistants tried to interrupt the protagonist. He shouted that he had just been about to explain everything, when suddenly a black wolf appeared in his shadow. Ragmont shouted that there was a monster in the shadow. Ricardo shouted that the monster had hidden. Isagi asked the boys to calm down. The entire pack of black wolves emerged from the forest, led by the leader. The leader offered to make a deal with the people. But if the protagonist could not satisfy their hunger, then the deal was off. Isagi replied, no problem. He knew that his farm would be second to none in terms of productivity and taste. Ragmont said that he had not expected such an outstanding specimen to be near the village. Ricardo said that the protagonist was able to kindly offer such a terrible monster a deal. Mercia said that there was no need to worry about attacks now. Asagi suggested that they calmly return to work. The assistants replied that they understood everything. Suddenly, the protagonist heard a noise under their feet. Someone asked if he could finally get outside. Asagi replied, "You can." The leader of the Black Wolves got outside. The protagonist suggested that they discuss the duties again. He said that the wolves' duty was to guard the farm, mainly at night. The leader replied, "No problem." In exchange, they would be provided with fruits and vegetables. Asagi clarified about the volume of the harvest. Mercia replied that she would figure it out. The protagonist agreed. Mercia said that whoever guards the village, they will feed every day until they are full. In addition, every 5 days, they will provide enough food for the whole pack to eat. The leader answered, "Not bad. Good enough." He was surprised that they would feed the pack every 5 days. Have people really advanced so much in agriculture? Isagi clarified that since they agreed on responsibilities, then they can talk about the rules. The wolf was surprised. "Rules?" Isagi answered, "An agreement to coexist comfortably. Do not attack people, do not break things, do not touch the farm's crops without permission, do not dirty things, and also save the farm workers from other monsters." The wolf turned around and walked away. Isagi stopped him. The leader said that their only responsibility is to protect the farm. They do not care about the people on it. The protagonist answered that this is not true. If there are no workers, then it will not be possible to grow crops. Therefore, he wants the wolves to think of them as part of the farm. The leader chuckled, but said that he would admit that there was some truth in the man's words. But he could not promise to protect everyone. Isagi smiled and said that was enough. The leader growled, "That's how it was," and ordered the pack to come out. The wolves began to crawl out from the leader's shadow. The leader ordered them to follow the rules and fulfill their duties. Asagi thought that these wolves moved through shadows. It was a convenient ability. Mercia told Asagi that they needed to go to the village and explain the situation to their father and the rest of the villagers. Asagi answered, "Yes." He asked if she could do that. The leader asked if they could count on watermelons since they were heading to the village now. Asagi answered, "Yes." He offered to lead them to the watermelon field. The wolves stood under the moonlight and looked at the watermelon field. The protagonist chose ripe watermelons and offered to cut them. The wolves drooled at the sight of the watermelons. Since the guard began to protect the plantation, peace reigned there. Almost 30 black wolves were accepted into the guard. The previous damage caused by deer and boars was compensated. Mercia asked the young wolves to stop playing. The leader asked Mercia how it all came to this. The villagers calmly stroked the black wolves, like pet dogs. The leader said that they were demons and lived in peace with nature. Therefore, the main thing is that people do not mind their presence. Thanks to the guard, the protagonist was able to spend more time on his research. He read a lot, counted, conducted experiments, and looked after new plants. He wanted to improve the harvest. To do this, he built an underground experimental farm. He collected data and experimented again. He reproduced light for plants using a magical tool that accumulated sunlight. Unfinished crops can grow in an unplanned way. In the underground experimental farm, crops are grown that are being experimented on. He checked the plant and realized that it was unstable in color, growth, and nutrition. Broccoli absorbed too many nutrients and destroyed the soil. He touched the wall and thought about Mercia, who was not there. Hidden behind the wall were grapes. They looked good on the outside. Isagi tasted them. They tasted sour. The seeds were of different sizes. The berries were difficult to eat. He knew it would be difficult to find a balance between fertility and taste. He wondered if he should give up mass production of grapes. Then he remembered her eyes and decided to try again. Mercia had done so much for him. In gratitude, he should give her the most delicious grapes. He heard a sound. Mercia was asking if he was there. He jumped out of the secret room before she saw. Isagi peeked out from behind the rack and asked what was going on. Mercia said that she knew he was in the basement. She scolded him for working too much. For the past 2 weeks, he has not left his workshop. Isagi was surprised and said that he did not even notice how time passed. Mercia said that if he continues like this, he will get sick. The protagonist scratched his head and said that they can have a day off. Mercia approved of this. Isagi wondered what he could do on a day off. Mercia asked, "How about a picnic? The weather is nice today, and there is a beautiful flower garden nearby." Isagi said, "Great." He suggested starting to prepare lunch. Mercia smiled, handed over the basket, and said that it is already ready. MC said that this is great. He suggested inviting the other staff. Mercia said that she already told everyone. They will join when they finish their work. The protagonist thanked Mercia for coordinating the action. The wolf leader's face appeared in the protagonist's shadow. He said that as an employee, he also wanted to participate in this event. Isagi was surprised when he managed to become his shadow. He was even more surprised that the wolf was interested in a picnic. Isagi and Mercia, accompanied by the wolf, were going to a picnic. They left the village and crossed a bridge, behind which was a flower garden. It was a large field strewn with different flowers. In the middle of the field stood a lonely tree. Isagi was surprised that there was such a beautiful garden near the village. He walked and looked at the flowers. He asked about each flower he liked. What was it called? Mercia said that one was called Hansania, another Tristner. The protagonist said that it was great that she knew the names of the flowers, and he only knew what they were made of, but did not know the names. He asked if it was possible to pick some flowers. Mercia answered only if there were a few. He picked up a Hansania flower. Mercia said that it had blue petals. Isagi said that he had alchemically altered the elemental ingredients and given her the flower. Mercia blushed and was surprised. Isagi himself blushed from the awkward pause and apologized. He thought that he did not want to give flowers out of the blue. He asked Mercia if he was annoying her. Mercia grabbed the flower and said, "Not at all." She replied that she didn't think he knew that giving a Hansania to the opposite gender had any special meaning. Isagi was confused and asked what the meaning was. Mercia winked and said that it was a secret. Isagi said that it was a little scary and asked if she could return the flower back. Mercia said no. This flower was given to her by him, and now the flower belongs to her. The wolf leader said that he was hungry. The protagonist asked, "Should we start eating already?" Mercia replied, "Yes, of course, there is plenty of food." They settled down in the shade of a tree. They spread out a blanket, and Mercia opened the basket with sandwiches. The wolf asked to give him his share quickly. Isagi said that he would cut off a piece now. He cut the sandwich in two, and gave one half to the wolf. While the protagonist was biting his sandwich, the wolf swallowed his in a flash. The sandwich contained juicy and thick ham, crispy lettuce, and sweet-like fruit tomatoes, with the right and light sourness. Isagi said what delicious vegetables they grow. Mercia asked what kind of vegetables he improved have a special taste. The wolf thought that they were thick tomatoes and the same cabbage. The protagonist's mouth was drooling while Mercia was eating her sandwich. The wolf asked if there were sandwiches with watermelon. Isagi was surprised. He said that such a thing does not exist. It is a very strange combination. Mercia replied that she actually had a sandwich like that. Isagi was surprised again. Mercia showed sweet sandwiches with watermelon and yogurt, and there were classic ones with salted watermelon and cheese salad. The protagonist said that it sounded surprisingly delicious. Mercia asked Isagi if he wanted to try it. He replied that he wouldn't refuse. The refreshing sweetness of the watermelon and the sourness of the yogurt went well together. He had never been a fan of the cloying sweets of their capital. The second watermelon sandwich had a pleasant sweet and salty taste. After lunch, the wolf sprawled out on a blanket in the shade. Isagi thanked her for the lunch and said it was delicious. The wolf said that of course it was delicious, but only because of the watermelon. Isagi looked at Mercia and said that only she could make a sandwich so delicious. They couldn't think of a better combination. She thanked the protagonist and said that she was very pleased. Isagi picked up the next sandwich and said that now they could try the classics. They sat in the shade of a tree and enjoyed the silence of nature. Nae came out from behind a hill and asked if they had started eating yet. The rest of the farm workers followed her. Ricardo said that they were coming, and Rhodes said that he was very hungry. Isagi was surprised that they had already finished all the work. Mercia said that they should have been given more work. Isagi asked what she was talking about. He answered that she had nothing, and she suggested spreading the blanket wider. The protagonist agreed. The whole friendly company was relaxing in nature. Koni came to pick up the goods as usual, said hello and introduced herself. She came from the wonderful Chamber of Commerce. The protagonist also said hello to her. "Good morning, Koni." He asked if she was buying the harvest as usual, right? Koni confirmed this and thanked the protagonist for the goods. Isagi showed her the boxes and said, "This is their collection." The girl was happy. "Thank you very much." She turned to her workers. "Guys, let's get to work." They obeyed her and began loading the goods. Koni was very thoughtful. The protagonist asked her what happened. Koni answered, "In the letter from Miss Mercia, she read that demons are in charge of security here." The protagonist confirmed these words. "Right? These are Shadow and Black Wolves. Should I call them?" Koni was happy, please. The protagonist waved his hand to the side and a wolf immediately appeared. Koni was very surprised. Black wolves. She asked Isagi-san, "Can she touch one?" Isagi smiled and said that if he himself allows it, then everything is fine. The girl extended her hand to the wolf in the hope of petting him. Well, the wolf deftly stole her hat from her head. She grabbed her head in frustration and screamed, "My favorite hat!" The wolf looked at her sideways and bared his teeth in a smile. Koni rushed towards the wolf screaming, "Give it back right now!" Well, the wolf deftly dodged and ran. Koni ran after him, screaming that the hat was hers. She almost grabbed the wolf by the tail in a jump, but the wolf suddenly disappeared. Koni sat down on her knees and asked where the black wolf had suddenly disappeared to. The protagonist asked her if she was okay. A voice sounded from the black spot on the ground. saying that she would not let herself be captured so easily. The wolf appeared out of nowhere again, and, holding the hat in his teeth, said, "Forgive me, girl." Coney rushed at the wolf and grabbed him with her hands, hanging on to him. She turned to Mr. Shadow Wolf and said that she caught him. She hung on the wolf like a tick and demanded that he give her her hat too. The wolf was outraged and asked why she was doing this. The wolf ordered her to let go of him. Coney hung on him and screamed, "Give it back, give it back, give it back, give it back." The wolf realized that he couldn't move. And Coney still wouldn't stop. "Give it back, please?" The wolf finally agreed. Okay. He said he would give it back, but asked her not to scream in his ear. The wolf threw her hat. Coney picked it up and put it back on her head. The protagonist called her, by the way, Coney. She responded, "Yes, what's wrong?" He asked if they could increase the volume of trade, about 1.5 times compared to the current level. Coney thought about it and said, "That's a very good offer, but given the number of carts in the allocated areas, it's hard to do now." MC understood her, that's for sure. She asked the protagonist if they had a surplus of crops. Asagi confirmed this and said that the production had been stable lately and he had grown too much for research, especially a lot of fruits. Connie thought about it. "I see. Then, how about going to the city and selling it?" MC was surprised and asked again, "To the city?" Connie confirmed, "That's right. There's a city nearby called Mylene, just a day's journey away." The protagonist remembered Mylene, the city he had stopped at with Mercia on their way to the village. Connie said that it was the closest city to their village and quite a lively one. If they went to the free market and paid for a place, they could do some trading. The protagonist realized that he could sell his fruits there that way. Connie happily supported him. That's right. If it was his crop, she was sure it would sell well. MC thanked her for the information and said that he would try to sell it all as soon as possible. She told him that she was glad she could help. Then Asagi told Mercia about it. She was surprised. "Mylene?" He confirmed, "Yep," and said that he was going to try selling the fruits from his reserves. Mercia smiled. She thought it was good. She was just thinking about buying some more goods for the house. Suddenly, Nea appeared from somewhere. Let them take her with them. Mercia was surprised. Does she want to too? Why does she want to go? Nea proudly said she wants everyone to know how delicious their harvest is. Only she can do such a advertising. The protagonist smiled and asked, "What is the real reason?" Nea told him, she works a lot, so she wants to go out into the city at least sometimes to have fun. Then she thought for a while and gasped in fear. Mr. Isagi set her up. He laughed because she told about her true intentions. Mercia was a little upset by her words, They are not going to play. This is business, you understand? Nea answered, "It doesn't matter. She just needs to get out of the village." The protagonist looked at the girls and said, "Well, the 3 of them will go." Nea screamed happily. She would then run and get ready. Isagi and Mercia were waiting for Nea on a bench. Mercia asked him, did he decide to take Nea because she and Mercia were childhood friends? MC smiled and answered, "Not at all. He and Mercia, the 2 of them, will be busy with sales. He thinks that Nea has a talent for customer service." Mercia agreed with him, right? She offered to do everything in their hands and leave Nea to take care of the customers. Nea just came and said that she was ready. She changed into different clothes and did not look like herself. Mercia told her that she had changed. Nea winked at her. Of course, this is an outfit for going out into the city. Then Nea quietly asked Mercia, why doesn't she also wear something nice for a change? Mercia answered, because she is at work. Nea was upset. Oh, this is so boring. She wants to see her friend in nice clothes. Mercia was a little upset and asked the protagonist to hurry. If they leave now, they will be back in time for nightfall. Isagi agreed and said that if they used the golem horses, he thought they could get there in 3 hours. Mercia was a little scared. MC said that they would do it right away. Nea was happy. Hooray, golems! The protagonist made 3 horses at once. Nea was happy again. 3 horses, and even one for her. MC said that he had received all the materials recently, so now there was no need to sit in pairs. He looked at Mercia and asked her what was wrong. She seemed upset about something, but said that it was nothing special. She deftly climbed onto the horse and said that it was time for them to go. The protagonist could not understand what Mercia was upset about. He thought that perhaps she was not happy with the appearance of the golem horse. The 3 of them rushed into the city. Nea was ahead of everyone, and after a while she shouted that she saw the city. They approached the huge gates and entered the city. The protagonist looked around and said, after all, Milan is huge. They walked along the streets. There were merchants everywhere. Nea asked Isagi, was this his first time in Milan? The protagonist answered her that he had been here before, but that time he just changed carriages, so he did not have time to see the sights. Nea told him, then today they can take their time. He agreed with her. Right? But first they need to sell their supplies and make a lot of money. Nea happily asked him, let her help him with this. Mercia stopped at a display case with jewelry. The protagonist remembered how she looked at the stone that he cleaned of impurities that time. He then asked if she liked it, but she quickly answered that she did not at all. He realized that she was interested in it, but she was bad at hiding her emotions. MC decided that after work he would give her something. They reached the market and were surprised, so this is the market. The protagonist knew that if he paid for the allocated space, he would be able to set up a tent, which he did. After setting up the tent, he said that now it was time to put out the goods. After a while, the goods were lying on the counter. Great, everything is ready. Nia looked at it and said, "It's not that attractive." The protagonist was surprised. Attractive? Mercia asked her, wasn't it obvious? The protagonist agreed with Mercia. Right, their fruits are very tasty. Nia asked both of them, don't they understand that the customers don't know this? Mercia was confused, right? Nia explained to them, they need to make the customers interested. Okay? The protagonist grinned incredulously. Mercia asked her, how exactly should they do this? Nia began to explain. Firstly, they need to offer not only fruits, but also say fruit juice. It dawned on Isagi, I get it, he has a blender with him. Then Nia asked, what about the pretty containers? Mercia replied, come to think of it, she has a lot of baskets of grapes from the village. Nia was happy, great, so I should use it. Now I need to take some fruits and put them together. It will be a fruit platter, a set, for the price of 3 silver coins. She did so and said, it looks beautiful, perfect as a souvenir. The protagonist thought, Nia is a genius, so I wonder if this will sell. To sell the excess fruit, they set up a stall at the free market in Mylene. They have quite a large stock. MC couldn't wait for the buyers to come. The first buyer, a woman, came. She said, let's see how much this costs. Mercia replied that the fruit platter would cost the woman 3 silver coins. The woman said she would take 1 set. Nia thanked the woman for buying. The protagonist was happy. Great, they sold the first set right away. Nia answered him, welcome. She was used to such things. Meanwhile, another customer came and asked, strawberries at this time of year? Are strawberries really delicious? The protagonist smiled at him and said that their products are delicious at any time of year. The customer asked why. The protagonist answered cheerfully, because it's a secret. The customer was surprised. A secret? Something is wrong here. MC objected to him. Not at all. How about trying some? Mercia supported Isagi, of course. She handed the customer a bowl of strawberries and said that there is no fee for trying. The customer grinned and said that then he will try some. He ate 1 berry and was surprised. What is it? This strawberry is much sweeter than any other strawberry. More people immediately came up to him, all asking to try some. Give me some. Give me some. Nia happily answered the customer that strawberries are certainly delicious on their own. But in the form of juice, they are even better, aren't they? She handed him a glass of juice. He tasted it and said he would also like some juice. There was already a crowd of people at the counter. Someone was asking if they could have some juice. Someone wanted to take 2 assortments. Nia shouted, get in line. Mercia told everyone that she would sell the goods in order. And the trade began in full swing. The baskets and boxes were quickly emptied. The line was huge. After some time, all the boxes were empty. Mercia said that they were finished. There were many more customers than expected. The protagonist said that at least they managed to reduce their stock. Then he remembered, oh by the way, they themselves have not made their purchases yet. Mercia agreed with him, right? Nia said the 2 of them can go, okay? Isagi objected and said that he would stay. He can't leave her alone. Nia put her arm around his shoulders, pulled him aside a bit and said, wait, Isagi-san. She asked him in a whisper, will he let the beautiful Mercia go shopping alone? The protagonist decided to object to her, but with so many customers, it will be hard for Nia to handle it alone. Nia just laughed in response and started pushing him with her hands. Come on, go already. Mercia thanked Nia for this. The protagonist said that he would buy Nia a souvenir as a thank you. Nia answered him, okay, Mr. Isagi, she will look forward to it. They waved to each other goodbye. Mercia told Mr. Isagi that they should go to the seasoning store first. He agreed with her. That's right. They entered the store. The seller greeted them. Welcome. MC looked at the shelves and thought, there is a beast kingdom in the city. He sees many seasonings for the first time. Mercia approached the shopkeeper and asked if she could have half a kilo of salt and sugar. The shopkeeper replied, 2 gold pieces for salt and 3 gold pieces for sugar. The protagonist thought about it. He didn't know that spices were so expensive. The protagonist saw it standing in bags and thought, dirt on the salt fields and pots and pans, dust from long transportation. It seemed like a reputable shop, but he had doubts. Mercia looked at him. MC had a confused look on his face. The girl asked him, did something happen, Mr. Isagi? He answered confusedly, no, but he thought that there might be some impurities in the goods. The shopkeeper apologized and said that a certain amount of impurities inevitably got inside. Isagi offered to remove the impurities. The shopkeeper was surprised. What? Isagi began to control magic. He removed all the impurities from the salt. The shopkeeper was happy. Such white salt. What is this? How did it happen? The protagonist replied, "Just alchemy to remove impurities." The shopkeeper asked if the protagonist could have a few words. After a while, MC told the shopkeeper that he had purified the rest. The shopkeeper was very grateful to him for such help. He gave them 2 bags, "Thank you very much." When they left the shop, Mercia said, thanks to the protagonist, they were able to reduce their expenses. "Thank you." The protagonist replied that he did it to purify his purchase. He did not know that they would get 30 kilograms for free. Although in the end, he received a very enthusiastic offer from the shopkeeper. He was flattered, but he had a lot of things to do on the farm. Isagi asked Mercia, "So, what will they buy next?" The girl replied, "Next is a tableware store, then a fabric store, and many more stores." They walked and bought the necessary goods in different stores. Mercia saw a jewelry store again. The protagonist suggested, "Should we go to this store?" The girl was confused. "No, next time." But she did not move away from the display case. MC asked her, "Isn't that one of the best parts of shopping?" Mercia agreed with him after all, right? So they went into a jewelry store. The protagonist saw the counter and was surprised. It was a magical ore that could transform at will to depict flowers and animals. The perfect material for decorating magic tools. Even so, the decorations of the Beast Kingdom are interesting. The culture is different from the empires, and the creatures that inhabit this kingdom are also different. They are all used as motifs. Mercia stopped at one of the counters, mesmerized. She saw a hairpin. The protagonist looked at it and said, "It would look good on her." Mercia disagreed with him. No, she didn't need such luxury. MC thought he was sure that this hairpin would look great on her. The girl distracted him from these thoughts and asked if it was time to go. The protagonist apologized for taking up so much time and said that they needed to get back to shopping. However, he was still thinking about that hairpin. He decided to think of something later. They returned to the free market. Nia leaned her head on the counter from fatigue. The protagonist asked if she was okay. She said that many customers had stopped by after work on their way here. She almost died. Mercia thanked her for her work. The protagonist also thanked her. Nia answered, "You're welcome." She asked, did they buy her a souvenir? Mercia reassured her and asked her not to worry. She bought her favorite wine. Nia was happy. "Great, Mercia." The protagonist understood. Oh no, he completely forgot. He would have been in trouble. Although no, he told Nia that he also had something for her. He handed her 2 bags. Nia asked in surprise, "Oh, what is he giving her?" The protagonist answered, "He gives high-quality sugar and salt." Nia was confused but took the gift. Practical, agreed, but a little sentimental. Mercia agreed with her. Exactly. After a while, they returned to the village. Nia said goodbye to Isagi and Mercia and went to her home. The protagonist was going to go to his workshop and said that it was late, but he hoped that dinner would still be wonderful. Mercia said that on such a hard day, it was important to have a good dinner. She asked him not to forget about it. He agreed with her. Good, good. MC went to his study, however, he still needed to cook something. The protagonist did alchemy. He managed to buy some precious stones. He decided to turn it into a leaf on a plant. This is what that very hairpin looked like. It is necessary to divide the sapphire into smaller pieces, make a depression, and then process the surface of each of these parts so that the hairpin shines beautifully from any angle. There was a knock at the door. Mercia called Mr. Isagi and said that dinner was ready. Isagi asked her to come in. She agreed, as you say. He said that she was just in time and asked her to come to him. Mercia came and saw a hair clip. What was it? She thought it was a hair accessory from the Milan City store. But then she realized, no, this is much prettier. The protagonist said that he thought the hair clip would look good on her. She asked if it was a gift. He said yes. He was confused and scratched the back of his head. She had always been so kind to him. He wanted to give this as a token of his gratitude. The protagonist held out the hair clip on his palm and asked if she would accept this gift. Mercia took the hair clip and said that there was nothing to thank her for, but thank you for the gift. She was very happy. She said that she would try it on right away then. MC agreed. Aha. The girl attached the hair clip to her hair, like this. What do you think, Mr. Isagi? The protagonist's eyes lit up and he said that it suited her very well. The hairpin looks great with her black hair. Mercia was confused, right? She even blushed a little. The girl thanked the protagonist again for the gift. Thank you very much. The Empire of Remorus. The Castle of Remorus. Prince Weiss said no. With such proposals, it will not be possible to improve food production. It is not even comparable to Isagi's research. The chief alchemist, Garius, apologized to the prince. The prince said that he needed a more effective plan. Garius replied that he understood. A messenger ran into the hall. He apologized for interrupting the conversation. The messenger turned to Mr. Garius and said that he urgently needed to get acquainted with something. The chief alchemist shouted, "Everything later. He is talking to the prince now." But the prince replied that everything was fine and allowed the messenger to enter. He said that since a messenger had come to his chambers, it must be urgent, right? The messenger said in a trembling voice that the alchemy department was delaying repair work on magical artifacts. Complaints were coming in from all departments. Garius asked again, "What? Why did this happen?" The messenger replied that by order of Lord Garius, all this work was entrusted to Isagi. The prince said that it seemed that too much was entrusted to Isagi alone. He asked Garius if bringing Isagi back would be much easier than finding a replacement for him. Garius clenched his fists and called Isagi a commoner again. He asked the prince for more time to find a decent solution. The messenger tried to say something. Garius shouted at him, "What else?" The messenger apologized, handed over a scroll, and said that there was one disturbing moment. Meanwhile, a few days after Isagi and the others returned from Milan, Nora galloped to Isagi's house and burst into it. She apologized to the protagonist. Was he surprised by her appearance? She said that traders had come for the harvest, and Mercia was not there at the moment. The protagonist replied that he would take care of it himself. Due to the events in the city of Milena, rumors about the farm quickly spread throughout the area. More and more merchants began to come to the village of Plumenia. It was necessary to conduct routine negotiations. Mercia, rushing to the negotiations, apologized. She said that she had already returned and said that she would take care of the merchants. Isagi thanked her and said that she had just returned and was already working. Mercia replied that she could be relied on. Mercia was always aware of the situation on the farm, so she was the only one doing the negotiations. Isagi thought that more and more work was falling on her. He had to come up with something. He thought that Nora was well versed in such things. After all, when she came to get a job, she said that she was helping her mother in her shop, taking into account the paperwork. The protagonist asked her how to work more effectively with merchants. Nora thought about it and answered, "Maybe we should make a trading point." Isagi asked again, "A trading point?" Nora explained that the farm does not have a place to receive customers, so everyone is looking for the two of them. Isagi agreed with these words. Nora continued, "If there was a point with the harvest on display, the client would immediately understand what can be bought and at what price. And if we also introduce basic rules, then not only she and Mercia will be able to work with customers." Isagi answered, "I see." He decided to discuss this with Mercia as soon as possible. Nora answered, "We definitely need to do this." She also said that if we add a restroom and entertainment for workers, it will be even more convenient. The protagonist answered that they will take this into account during construction. Nora resolutely said that the management of the point and documentation should be entrusted to her. She is good at calculations. Isagi smiled and said that he would propose her candidacy. Nora thanked the protagonist and rode away. Isagi stood and thought about the trading post. Mercia came and told MC that she was back. Isagi asked how the negotiations went. Mercia answered that everything was fine with the Sparavorums. Isagi asked if there were any problems. Mercia answered yes. A visiting merchant had just told her that there was a crop failure in many regions, and crop production was falling. Isagi was surprised. A crop failure? And this is happening in many villages? He answered that they did not have anything like that. Mercia said that thanks to his improved crops and fertilizer, they avoided problems. Due to the rise in prices, smart merchants will come to the farm more often. Isagi thought that this meant that they needed to open a trading post as soon as possible. He told Mercia that they needed to discuss something. She asked what happened. He told Nora's idea about the trading post. Mercia said that it was a great idea, but this will be a big burden on Mr. Isagi. The protagonist replied that there is no need to worry. He took out a plan and said that if you use alchemy, you can build everything. Mercia was surprised that he already had the plans. Isagi said that here, you can not only sell the harvest but also taste it on the spot. Merchants and residents will also be able to relax here. There will be a warehouse and a cool room at the back, as well as a restroom for employees. You can also make a changing room and a tea room. Mercia asked Mr. Isagi if he was also excited about this idea. The protagonist replied that he just wanted everyone on the farm to be happy. Mercia replied that she understood everything and suggested going to her father for permission. Isagi told the village elder about the construction plan. Kelsey was very happy with this prospect. Soon the protagonist began construction. He used alchemy and magic as much as possible in the new construction. The farm workers watched the progress of the construction in surprise, and now the new building is ready. Mercia came up to the protagonist, handed him some water, and said that it was a good job. He thanked her for her kind words. Nea walked around the building and couldn't believe that everything was ready. She asked permission to look inside. Isagi answered, "Of course you can." Everyone went inside and was amazed at the beauty. There were many shelves for selling products inside. The building had high ceilings and a lot of light. Nea shouted that it was very cozy here. She suggested making a recreation area. The protagonist answered that it was a great idea. He instantly made a soft and comfortable sofa for relaxation. Naya said that she didn't want to leave here and would live here. Mercia asked Isagi about the counter. He answered that it was like the one at the market in Milena. He wanted it to be possible to try juice and other treats there. This way, you can evaluate the quality of the farm's products, and if the point becomes popular, you can expand the recreation area, or make a small restaurant. Isagi said that dreams come true. Mercia agreed with him. She heard the sound of hooves outside the window and told the protagonist that it seemed like new customers had arrived. Isagi asked, "Again?" These were the carriages of the wonderful trading company. Isagi said that it was Connie who had arrived, but unknown men got out of the carriage with her. Isagi felt that the large beastman had incredible magical power. Who was that? Isagi waved his hand to Connie and called her. He asked Mercia, "Who were these people with Connie?" All the villagers knelt down on one knee and bowed their heads. Isagi did not understand what was happening. He asked, what had come over everyone? Mercia answered that among the beastmen, lion blood flows in the veins of the royal family only. The protagonist wondered what a member of the royal family was doing in such a wilderness. The beastman asked the protagonist, "Is he the manager of this farm? Is it true that his name is Isagi?" The protagonist himself knelt down on one knee and bowed his head. He replied that everything was correct. His name was Isagi, and he was the manager of the farm. The beastman said that there was no need to be so formal and introduced himself that his name was Lionel. He was the 62nd king of the beastmen. Isagi realized that this was the king himself, the ruler of the kingdom of the beastmen. Lionel told the protagonist to stand up. Everything was fine. MC thought that it looked like the retinue and the number of carriages were kept to a minimum. He was too active for a king. Isagi asked the king why he came to Plumenia village. The king replied that he was interested in a large farm, and he asked the wonderful merchant guild to bring him here. The protagonist was surprised that even the king had heard rumors about the farm. King Lionel said that it seemed that this place was very popular among merchants. The man next to the king said that the exploits of the farm had long been known. The man was the chancellor of the Beastman Kingdom. His name was Kevin. He said, if possible, could they take a tour of the farm? Isagi said, of course. But he wasn't sure the farm would live up to their expectations. But he would give them a tour anyway. The king said it would be very welcome. He asked Connie if she would go with them. Connie refused because she wanted to talk to the workers. She was interested in seeing the new store. The protagonist thought that accepting a royal person was too much responsibility. He invited everyone to go into a separate room first. The king said, these are the very same golem horses. Isagi agreed. He thought that walking would be a bit difficult, so he invented horses. He explained how to control a horse. If you hold down the right handle, the horse will go forward, and if you hold down the left, it will stop. The king said that it was very interesting. Lionel sat on the horse and asked permission to ride. He said that he liked this thing, and he wanted one for himself. The protagonist was surprised that the king had already settled in. Isagi said that if the king placed an order, they would make a suitable horse for him. The king begged very much. He also asked for a small horse if possible. His daughter's birthday is coming soon. Isagi replied that he understood the king. He offered to follow him because he would give a tour of the farm. The king was eager to see everything. He squeezed the horse's control handle hard and shouted, "Hiya!" But the horse did not go faster. Then the king asked the protagonist if it could go faster. Isagi apologized and said that the road on the farm grounds was narrow, and for safety's sake, he asked them to move slowly. The king replied sadly. Isagi said that if the place was safe, then they could go at any speed. King Lionel replied that he understood. The protagonist thought about the king, that he seemed kind, but somehow too open a person. The protagonist reported that they would soon approach the vegetable beds. The king watched the workers harvesting the crops. MC called out to Mr. Lionel. The king replied that he had heard that the land here was quite poor, and it was surprising to him to see so many crops grown. Isagi replied that with the help of alchemy, they had improved the varieties and made them resistant to poor soil, diseases, and pests. The king said that he said it easily, but it must have been very difficult to put it into practice. King Lionel said that the protagonist was really very talented. Isagi was surprised. He felt very awkward from such words. The king got off his horse and went to the bush. He was surprised that the tomatoes were already ripe. The king said that means there really is a crop out of season. Isagi offered the king to take one tomato if he wanted. The king asked again, is it really possible? He took advantage of the offer and tried one of the tomatoes. The emotions from the taste were on his face. He asked what kind of sweetness it was. It was the most delicious tomato he had ever tasted. The protagonist said, thank you. He said that these tomatoes are not only very sweet, but also have a dense flesh. They do not fall apart when cooked. It is a variety that can be used for many dishes. A voice was heard in the shadows, saying that it was a bit noisy today. The king's guards asked who it was. The guards asked the king to step aside. One of them asked what the monster was doing here. The leader of the Black Wolves, Kokoro, appeared in front of them. Isagi said that he forgot to warn about Kokoro and the other wolves. He stopped the king's guards and said that these wolves were guarding the farm. He asked them not to start a fight. The wolf leader said, unless the king's guards attacked first. Isagi asked him not to provoke the guards. King Lionel smiled. He recognized Kokoro, the highest type of black wolf. It was a shadow wolf. He playfully beckoned the wolf with his palm. Kokoro bared his teeth. Isagi grabbed his head. The wolf disappeared underground into the nearest shadow. Lionel said that the peculiarity of these wolves was that they hid in the shadows. Kokoro tried to attack the king from behind. Lionel said that it was naive of the wolf. He was the first to strike the wolf in the jaw with his hand. The leader disappeared underground again. The protagonist tried to stop him, but the wolf attacked the king again and received another blow. Then the king jumped over the wolf and said that this was the naive behavior of a monster. King Lionel said that he would fight the wolf, but without his tricks. Kokoro growled that he would kill the king. The king laughed loudly and said that he had not warmed up like this for a long time. He asked again about the wolf's name being Kokoro. Isagi asked how the leader was feeling. The wolf growled that there was no need to pretend that MC was worried about him, and asked not to touch him. Mercia said that she did not think that Kokoro would be so angry. Isagi answered that it was not for nothing that they say that the king of beasts is the strongest. The wolf was lying down nearby. The king told the wolf that his ability to move in the shadows was really very convenient, but he relied on it too much. He needed to learn the basics of combat. The wolf growled that next time he would kill the king and disappeared into the shadows. The protagonist apologized and said that Kokoro was a bit stubborn. King Lionel replied that all higher species were like that. He said that he was worried about the farm's security, but it seemed like there was someone to rely on. Isagi smiled and said that although Mr. Lionel had defeated the security, the king replied that there was nothing to be done. He was very strong. He was sure that Asagi's farm was simply amazing, especially the fruits were something else. The protagonist thanked the king. Mercia suggested that if the king wanted, they could collect some fruits for the journey. The king replied that that would be great. He said that if he were to eat such delicious food alone and return home, his wife and daughters would definitely scold him. Isagi thought about the fact that Lionel was a loving husband, a caring father, even though he was the king. But at the same time, he was an ordinary animal lover. Kevin called His Majesty and reminded them that it was time to get to the main thing. The king replied that Kevin was right. He asked Isagi if he knew that the kingdom's fields were suffering from crop failure this year. The protagonist replied that he had just recently learned about it, but without much detail. The king said that in fact, this was happening not only in one region, but throughout the entire Beastman country. Isagi was surprised. Lionel said that as the ruler of this country, he wanted to do everything possible to save the people. He bowed to Isagi and asked if he could sell them food. Mercia and Isagi were shocked. The chancellor tried to persuade the king to raise his head. He said that the king should not bow to a commoner. It undermines the king's honor. The king shouted that he wanted to spit on the rules. He will not demand food while sitting arrogantly on the throne. No one will expect that from him. He asked the protagonist to help. Isagi thought that the king himself was bowing his head to save his people. He is not like the imperial nobility who only thinks about their own benefit and glory. Isagi asked Mr. Lionel to raise his head. He said that if his harvest could save many people, he would gladly help. The king asked if the protagonist would really sell them food. He shook the protagonist's hand and said that he would be in his debt. Isagi asked Mercia to tell the king about the current production volume. She replied, okay. Mercia invited Mr. Lionel to follow her. Isagi asked Chancellor Kevin to come over for a moment. The protagonist asked if the chancellor knew the general structure of the kingdom's soil. Kevin replied that he knew in general. The protagonist asked to tell him about the characteristics of the soil. The chancellor asked if he could find out why Isagi needed this. He explained that given his position, he could not share information of this nature without an important reason. Isagi replied that simply selling the harvest was not enough to prepare for the unexpected. Therefore, he wanted to pass on the varieties of plants he had bred, taking into account the soil in this country. The chancellor was surprised. Would Isagi really agree to this? After all, in this case, the farm would lose its advantage and its profit would decrease. The protagonist answered, perhaps, but he himself was an orphan and knows very well what hunger is. That is why he wants to save as many people as possible. The chancellor answered, okay. He took a scroll from under his clothes and handed it to Isagi. Kevin said that if his knowledge could help, he was ready to share it. The protagonist unrolled the scroll and could not believe his eyes. All the data about the soil, climate, even the types of crops grown were written there. It seemed that most of the kingdom was areas with abundant rainfall, and places like Plumania village, where there is little rain and nutrients in the soil, are an exception. He thanked the Chancellor for the information and handed him the scroll back. Kevin was surprised. Was the protagonist already finished? Asagi jumped on his horse and said that he needed to do some breeding in the workshop, so he said goodbye. The Chancellor watched as Asagi rode away on his horse. He did not understand how everything could be done so quickly. In his workshop, the protagonist began to work. He decided to start with potatoes. This was the first crop he grew in Plumania. Potatoes are a vegetable that can grow even in the harshest conditions. It was necessary to adapt it to the soil outside the village. The protagonist decided to change the growth factor. But selection is not just like that. If you remove one growth factor, the other factors will stop working and the plant will mutate. The protagonist tried to fix everything and be more careful. The soil in the kingdom of Beastmen is not at all like the soil in the village or the empire. Therefore, old data will not help here. But now he has accumulated experience. Mercia came to the workshop and knocked on the door. She said that His Majesty the King would return soon. A scream was heard from behind the door. It worked. She opened the door, entered the room and saw Asagi, who was sitting on a chair and holding a pot of seedlings in his hands. Asagi said that although it seemed that he had succeeded, it was still unknown whether he would actually be able to grow this plant. She asked if he was confident in his abilities. King Lionel walked near the carts, waiting for the protagonist. Asagi ran to meet the king. The king said that he had heard information from Kevin that Asagi wanted to breed new plant varieties. He asked if the protagonist had already finished breeding. Asagi apologized for making him wait. He handed the king a bag and said that it contained potatoes adapted to the kingdom's soil. The king took a fruit out of the bag and said that now any resident could easily grow this plant and satisfy their hunger. Isagi said that by planting this plant, the harvest could be collected in 3 days. The king asked, like 3 days? The protagonist replied that this was just a temporary solution. This potato quickly depletes the soil, so it cannot be planted in the same place twice. The king answered clearly and added that he would issue a strict order. Isagi asked that if anything strange be seen in the potatoes, they be destroyed immediately. Rapid growth could lead to unfavorable consequences. The king answered, understood. The chancellor reminded the king that it was time to go. The king said that he owed a great debt to Isagi and the farm workers. He swore on his own name that he would repay the debt. Isagi replied that he had merely fulfilled his duty as a citizen. He hoped for the king's support in the future. The king answered, of course. Finally, the king said that it might be unnecessary, but he wanted to warn them. These lands are the western edge of the Beastman Kingdom. They were once considered barren lands, but now they are fertile farmland. If someone finds these lands valuable for conquest, some countries may try to seize them. But this could only happen if the empire had a crop failure, and that was unlikely. Isagi thanked them for the warning. He said that they would strengthen the village's defenses just in case. The king replied that if anything happened, they should definitely contact him. He said goodbye and asked to convey his greetings to the villagers. Isagi waved goodbye. Only Mercia stood there sadly. It had been a busy day. Isagi said that he had not spoken to such important people for a long time and was even a little nervous. Mercia had been silent all evening. He called out to her. Mercia asked if everything was fine with Lord Isagi in this village. He asked why she was interested in this. Mercia replied that she had been thinking about it all the time since she had invited him to this village. After all, he was a talented man and could do great things, and she had insisted that he stay here, practically forcing him to. Isagi replied that this was not true. When he was literally kicked out of the imperial castle, when he was forced to resign from his post as court alchemist, and after arriving in the village, she had always supported him. Therefore, he was sincerely grateful to her for everything. He is here of his own free will, and she does not need to worry about it. Mercia replied that she is very happy to hear it. The protagonist thought about something that he did not even suspect about her thoughts, although they worked together. If only he could somehow repay her for her concern. Suddenly, it occurred to him. Isagi invited Mercia to come with him because he wanted to show her something. They went down to the basement of the workshop. Isagi opened a secret room. Mercia asked what he wanted to show her, but when she went inside, she saw huge vineyards. Isagi said that for inviting him to the village and for her constant support, this is his gratitude. Mercia was surprised that he grew grapes especially for her. She was touched by this. Mercia asked if everything that was here was an improved variety grown by Mr. Isagi. MC replied that Mercia loved grapes so much and he simply could not give her something ordinary. If he prioritizes taste, then mass production of grapes is not yet possible. Therefore, only a few varieties have been grown. Mercia replied that she is still very happy. She asked if she could try it. MC replied, yes, of course. Mercia picked one berry, carefully brought it to her mouth, and chewed it. Isagi wished her bon appetit. Tears of happiness appeared in Mercia's eyes. Isagi asked how it tasted. Mercia replied that it was very tasty. She said that it was the best grape she had ever eaten. The protagonist replied that he was glad to hear it. Mercia said that before Lord Isagi came, they didn't have such luxurious food in their village, and the fact that the villagers can now enjoy such products is entirely his merit. Isagi thought that she was right. After all, the food in the village had changed a lot, but it was not only his merit. Working on the farm would not be possible without the efforts of the rest of the guys. He suggested not to be sad. It was quite possible that he would still cause trouble in the future. He asked if he could count on her support. Mercia replied, of course, Lord Isagi. No matter what happened, she would always be by his side. It was the dead of night. The Remuris Empire. A meeting was taking place in one of the rooms of the castle. Prince Weiss said that the fact that the food program was rejected and the money was sent to the army was entirely his decision, but many were expressing their dissatisfaction. The prince said that this issue needed to be resolved quickly. The crop failure affected not only the Beastman Kingdom, but all regions including the Empire. He asked if anyone had any good ideas. Everyone at the table was silent and sat with their heads down. The prince called everyone useless wimps. He thought that at this rate, it would not be long before he lost his right to the throne. He turned to the chief alchemist, Garius, to see if he could say anything. Garius apologized and said that he had no quick solutions. The prince got angry. Garius continued and said that he had heard something interesting. Although the crop failure had affected a fairly wide area, for some reason, there were no reports of famine in the neighboring kingdom. The prince asked why. He said that they too must have suffered like the empire. Garius found out that in the village of Plumania, a large farm called Isagi was receiving a huge amount of crops. The prince said that he had heard the name somewhere. Garius said that there was no doubt that this was the same Isagi. Garius assumed that if the research was complete, then it was not surprising that there were no problems in that village, and they would get the harvest at an incredible speed. The prince was surprised, really? Garius said that the village was located near the border with the empire. The prince praised and thanked the chief alchemist for the good idea. He walked up to the map hanging on the wall, put his hands on it, and said that they would follow the old proven method. If something was missing, they would simply take it from others. After King Lionel's visit, even more people began to come to the village to buy the harvest. In order to prepare for the guests as soon as possible, they began preparing the trading point for opening again. And now, today, finally, the opening day. The protagonist understood that it was hot today. I wonder if customers would come in such heat. He approached the trading point and was surprised. What? They hadn't opened yet, and there was already a huge line. He ran in the other direction. It was the right decision to make a back entrance. He entered through the back door and greeted Mercia. Good morning. She greeted him too. Good morning, Mr. Isagi. He asked her how the preparations for the opening were going. He replied that everything was ready. The sellers were also fully prepared. The protagonist looked around. It really had become a full-fledged trading point. MC asked, probably not inferior to the market in the capital of the empire? Mercia answered him. In terms of quantity, they may not reach it, but in terms of variety of goods, they are most likely superior. Suddenly, Nora called him. She thanked him for allowing her to come here to work. He replied that she was well-versed in trade and accounting. He apologized for loading her with hard work before. The other sellers congratulated Nora on this. Nora said that Mr. Isagi can trust her to manage the trading point. The protagonist replied that he was counting on her. Mercia approached the vendors and said, well guys, let's open up. She approached Mr. Isagi and said that it was necessary to begin opening the store. They opened the doors and he said, thank you for waiting. Mercia added, Isagi's store is officially open. Welcome. He was surprised by her words. Wait, what kind of name is that? The girl just laughed in response. There were a lot of goods on the shelves. People were walking between the shelves and choosing what to buy. There were a lot of customers. The protagonist saw Mercia's parents and greeted them. Kelsey, Sienna. Good afternoon. Kelsey said, it looks like it's quite lively here. The protagonist agreed with him and said that he was surprised by this. Are stores that rare here? Kelsey answered him. The magnificent building and the variety of goods play an important role, but the main reason for the popularity is Isagi himself. Everyone trusts the protagonist. MC was confused and grabbed his head. He thanked Kelsey for such words. Thank you. Sienna saw an empty place to the side and asked Isagi, why is this place empty? They're going to use the harvest from the farm there and offer food, pastries, drinks, and more. It will be a cafe on the territory of the farm. Sienna supported him. A great idea. She said that she wants it to open as soon as possible. She was a little surprised in such a remote place and a luxurious cafe. Some customers heard their conversation and supported the protagonist. Cool, this is just wonderful. He tried to calm them down and said that for now it is only in the plans. There is not even a deadline yet. He thought that he should not underestimate the hearing of the beastmen. Sienna told him, then we need to hurry. He tried to calm her down. Well, in response to her request, he will try to open the cafe as soon as possible. Mercia heard the whole conversation and scolded the protagonist the next day. She said that Mr. Asagi is too kind. MC scratched his head and asked if she thought so. The girl explained to him that if he took on too much work, he would quickly collapse from exhaustion. So she would help him. He, as always, thanked her for her help. She asked what happened because he looked a little puzzled. He told her that they really needed a cook. MC explained that Mercia's food was undoubtedly delicious, but he couldn't ask her to cook all the time. She replied that she was very pleased with his words, but her skills were not enough to work as a cook in a cafe. The protagonist was surprised, right? She confirmed, yes, that's right. After all, Mr. Isagi's products are special. Without special skills and experience, it is difficult to fully reveal the taste. MC scratched his chin. Yes, you can't argue with that. However, the problem is how to find a great cook. Isagi asked if Mercia had any ideas. She thought about it. No, well, there is a person who could help with this. MC was surprised. Who was she talking about? Suddenly there was a knock on the door and a voice from the street. Hello, it's Coney from the Wonderful Trading Company. As always, happy to cooperate. Mercia smiled. It seemed that the one she wanted to talk about had already arrived. The protagonist explained everything to Coney. She thought about it, so they needed a cook. Isagi agreed. A difficult situation. Coney smiled and said, in that case the company will send them 2 cooks under a guild contract. The protagonist could not believe his ears. What? Was that possible? Wait, they won't send professional cooks here for free, will they? And what are the conditions? Coney said, it's nice to deal with understanding people. They want the protagonist to sell the wonderful company that magical device. The mixer, which Isagi himself made. MC was surprised. A mixer? Coney confirmed, yeah, that's it. She saw it at the point of sale. The mixer will definitely be in demand. We need about 50 pieces to start with. And if things go well, then another 50, or even 100. The protagonist was confused, of course. It is possible, but Coney was interested. Something is wrong? What but? Isagi asked. Well, how will the cooks react to the fact that they are sent to work in such a remote place? If they are uncomfortable, it will be disrespectful not only to them, but also to the customers of the cafe at the farm. Coney understood everything. She said that she wanted to clarify. The cooks in the cafe will be able to freely use the farm's products, right? The protagonist confirmed this. Yes. The farm and the cafe will work closely together, so the farm will deliver ingredients when possible. Will this suit them? Coney was happy. Then there will be no problems. The protagonist could not understand this. Mercia, as always, came to the rescue. She explained that you can compare cooks to alchemists. She asked him to imagine a place where you can use any high-quality materials without restrictions. Isagi said that would be great. He himself would want to go there, and then he realized, that's it. Coney confirmed his suspicions exactly. Products from Isagi's farm are a dream for the chefs of the kingdom. The protagonist was surprised just that much. Coney added, and one more thing. As the products from the farm become more and more popular, the demand for culinary skills will also grow. Everything became clear to Isagi, which means it is profitable for both the chefs and the company. MC thanked her for the information and said that then there is no longer any room for repairs and they should immediately start cooperating. He extended his hand to shake. Well, send us the chefs. Coney shook his hand and said, it will be done. The protagonist answered her, then he will immediately start working on mixers. Isagi was sitting in his workshop and inventing mixers. He invented the last one. Done. It was the 50th. It was so hot. Something needs to be done urgently. He thought that he would not be surprised if someone fainted while working in the field, and then it suddenly dawned on him, exactly. You need to make that thing and give it to everyone. After some time he came to the field. Nea was surprised to see him. Isagi? MC took something out of his backpack and said he wants everyone to try it on. Nea was confused. What is this? She put the thing on her neck. The protagonist asked her to try pressing the button. Nea pressed it and gasped in surprise. Ew, it's cool. Ragmunt also put it on and turned it on. Wow, why is the wind blowing from here? The protagonist laughed and said, good question. He changed the shape of the platinum and made a base. And then he installed a small magic stone of ice and wind inside and connected it with a magic circuit. Nea was surprised. Impressive. Isagi suggested that Kokoro try to put it on too, but the wolf was indignant. Don't talk nonsense. Is MC going to put a collar on him? Kokoro said that he is not his pet dog. Isagi was confused. It wasn't a collar. He put it on himself. Look. The wolf said he didn't care. He was against it. If anyone was going to put it on him, then let it be Mercia. The protagonist was surprised. Why? Mercia explained, probably because the wolf had a reason for doing so. She was a beastman after all. MC didn't understand anything anyway, so what difference did it make? Mercia took the thing and said that she would put it on herself then. Kokuro assessed it, rather coolly. Well, MC agreed with him, for sure. Then he turned to Mercia. Did she want to try it too? Mercia thought about it and asked, so Mr. Isagi would put it on her neck himself? The protagonist quickly answered, yes, of course. He walked up to her, put the thing on her neck and turned it on. Done. So how is it, Mercia? The girl answered, just wonderful. Kokuro was surprised by the protagonist's actions and said that he was a daredevil, however. Isagi did not understand him and asked him to explain what he was talking about. The wolf was confused. Mercia giggled. After some time, a carriage from the guild arrived in the village. Koni with 2 companions came out of it. One of them was surprised, so this is what the village of Pluminia is like, much livelier than he thought. Koni turned to her companions. Well, guys, it's time to go to Isagi. They confirmed it. Isagi ran home and apologized for being late. Koni and the companions were already sitting at the table. Mercia brought them tea. The protagonist said, and these two, they are cooks. Koni confirmed it. That's right. Then she asked her companions to introduce themselves. One of them jumped up, almost knocking over his glass, and shouted almost in a military manner, they came from the restaurant of the trading guild. Wonderful. His name is Dario. Nice to meet you. He also sat up quickly and seeing that he had spilled it, apologized. The protagonist reassured him everything was fine. No need to worry so much. Everything was fine. Then the girl stood up and introduced herself. She was also from this restaurant. Her name is Sheer. Nice to meet you. The protagonist also introduced himself to them and said that his name is Isagi. He is an alchemist. Mercia couldn't believe what she heard and asked if they were both from that same restaurant. The protagonist did not understand what they were talking about and asked Mercia if she knew about this restaurant. Mercia explained, it seems to be an elite restaurant in the capital of the Kingdom of Beastmen. They even reserve tables a year in advance. MC was surprised. What? Connie confirmed her words. These two will definitely prove themselves in your cafe. The protagonist asked the chefs, are they really okay with it? Dario loudly answered, of course they are not against it. They want to express their delight in working with ingredients from this farm through food, and the unique taste of these products. He asked the girl to confirm his words. Shire said that working with Asagi's products is an invaluable experience for them as chefs. The protagonist thought they both came with such a strong determination. He told them, okay, then welcome again. Nice to meet you. He extended his hand to shake. Dario shook it and they were also very happy. MC turned to Koni and thanked her. She replied, it's nothing. By the way, if possible, I would like to receive the mixers she ordered earlier. Isagi answered her, that's no problem. He has already finished it. Koni was happily surprised. It's ready already? In just 2 weeks? Koni picked up the mixer and was even more surprised by what she saw. It was the logo of the wonderful company. The protagonist replied that he had a special relationship with her, and printing logos on the product was his special service. Koni was very happy. Thank you very much. MC turned to the cooks and said that he would show them the farm. Dario was happy. Yes, here you go. They moved around the farm on horses. Isagi showed everything. This is where the vegetables grow. Shire was very surprised. This is what it is, the famous big farm. Dario looked at the cucumbers. Wow. There are many times more cucumbers here than usual. Mercia confirmed that they had guessed correctly. These crops were improved by Mr. Isagi to increase the yield. Dario could not believe it. Even alchemy can do this. Suddenly a voice was heard from the bushes. Ah, there you are. It was Nea. She asked the protagonist, is he inspecting the fields again? MC answered her. He is currently giving a tour for the cooks from the farm cafe. Dario introduced himself and said that it was nice to meet you. Shire also introduced herself. Nea shouted that she was glad to meet you and her name is Nea. They answered her, very nice. Nea was surprised at how polite they were. She asked them to make sure to cook for her when they had some free time at the cafe. Okay? Dario answered her, no problem. But what about a takeaway lunch? Nea said that when she had the chance, she would go to the cafe, but sometimes she was very busy working on the farm. And to be honest, she wasn't very good at cooking. And getting up early to make bento wasn't her thing. Dario remembered, exactly. Bento. He hadn't thought of that at all. The cooks bowed to Nea and thanked her for the valuable advice. She replied that it was nothing and said that she would continue working. Isagi summed it up. Well, that's how it was. They would see the other 4 employees later. Dario was surprised again. Only 4 employees for such a huge farm? The protagonist replied, not quite. In fact, there were a few more. He clapped his hands and called the golems. MC explained that these were golems who did the farming. One of the golems brought cucumbers and the protagonist suggested that the cooks try it. Dario thanked him and took the cucumber. Shire wished him a pleasant appetite. The cook examined the cucumber. There were no curvatures, not a single spot. The shape was perfect. He bit into it. It was very tasty. Such a juicy, rich taste. I have never tasted cucumbers like this. Shire also tried it and said that if all the products are of such quality, it is even a little scary. But with such good ingredients, it is better not to add anything at all. Dario laughed and agreed with her, and that is true. MC was indignant. No, you can't do that. Dario calmed him down and said, it's just a joke. Their job as cooks, Shire finished his sentence, is to realize this wonderful taste to the maximum. Mercia smiled at them, encouragingly. Izagi said, can't wait to get started. Dario happily reported that he already had a ton of ideas. The protagonist suggested going back to the outlet and discussing everything there. After a while, everyone gathered in the cafe area. Nea happily exclaimed, hooray! Tasting! One of the customers said, I never expected to be able to enjoy new dishes on the very first day. Rhodes accidentally pushed the protagonist and apologized. MC replied, there was nothing wrong with that. Asagi thought about it and realized that even for so many people it was a bit cramped. We need to expand the cafe area. Dario scribbled something on a piece of paper and said, okay, let's go with this menu option. Shire agreed with him. He laid out the knives in front of him and tied an apron. Cooking began. Dario was cutting vegetables, Shire was rolling out the dough. He was boiling something in a saucepan, she was baking in the oven. They worked together and harmoniously, everyone knew what they needed to do. The audience watched in fascination. Mercy said, these are the professionals from wonderful restaurants. The protagonist responded to her. How wonderful. Connie was standing next to him. That's right. That's right. The MC turned around and was surprised. Connie? How long has she been here? Connie told him. She heard there was going to be a tasting, so she came back. The chefs had finished cooking. Shire summed it up. Well then, ladies and gentlemen, Dario announced to everyone, let's begin the tasting. Shire added, they were hoping for honest reviews. There were 4 dishes prepared for lunch. The first main course, cabbage rolls stewed in tomato sauce. The second main course, gratin. The third main course, omelette. The fourth main course, pasta with spring vegetables. Side dishes, freshly baked bread, salad, and cucumber puree soup. Isagi was delighted. What a luxurious choice. Mercia confirmed, the side dishes also looked delicious. The protagonist agreed, well, it's delicious. Everyone sat down at the tables. The protagonist and Connie unanimously wished everyone bon appetit. They began to try. Everyone's faces were distorted with pleasure. The protagonist thought, these cabbage rolls concentrated sweetness and depth of taste, and the slight sourness of the tomato perfectly complements the whole dish. All he could say out loud, wow. Mercia suggested that he try the gratin. She said that it was incredibly delicious. The protagonist tried it and agreed with her, and it's true, sweet vegetables and rich cheese go well together. Dario confirmed and said that it was good that everything was fried. Nora suddenly said, there's just one problem. Now she'll want to come here every day. Ricardo agreed with her, it's just incredibly delicious. And how much does it cost? Shire answered, a set with gratin, 6 copper coins. And the other 3 dishes, 5 copper coins each. Ricardo said, quite reasonable prices. He thought the price would be more than 8 coins. Connie said that an affordable price is also important, but will they even come out ahead? Shire immediately took out some papers and said that she had already prepared the materials on this issue. Connie took them, glanced through them, showy, so that's it. Isagi was surprised, so fast. Connie summed up, considering the income of the villagers and the volume of coin circulation, this is an adequate price. Everything has been thoroughly studied. Shire was happy. Great. Dario asked Isagi how he liked the dishes. Shire asked if the dishes were up to standard. The protagonist smiled and said that everything was very tasty. Vegetables from a large farm were used wisely, and the flavor was revealed perfectly. These dishes should definitely be included in the lunch menu. The cooks were glad that everyone liked everything. They bowed and thanked them for the honest assessment. The farm workers said that if everything was decided, then it was time for them to get back to work. Thank you for the treat. Shire asked the protagonist if she could distract him for a minute. He agreed, of course. She showed him pictures of the cafe's interior. What did he think of that idea? Shire explained that they wanted to create a cozy place and not spoil the atmosphere of the outlet. Isagi agreed. Yes, that was exactly the idea. Shire said, however, if he wants to give the cafe a bright look, then now the interior seems a little gloomy. The protagonist agreed, exactly. They will have to change the general structure of the building, but it is not a fact that this will improve the lighting. Dario also decided to help and suggest, listen, maybe we should add more windows? He pointed with his finger, if we put windows here, we can let even more daylight into the room. The protagonist was happy. Great idea. Let's do it. Shire praised Dario for the idea. He thanked her in return. Isagi summed it up, then, let's install windows for lighting. Shire agreed and said, then they will blow out the arrangement of tables. The discussion lasted until late at night, a week after the tasting. Residents asked the protagonist when the cafe will open. He asked to wait a little longer and told them that they had increased the space for the cafe, hired 2 employees. They had installed magical devices to cool the air. He was expecting an influx of guests, but the line was so huge that the end was not in sight, and this was an order of magnitude longer than he thought. After a while, Mercia waved to him through the window. This was the signal to open. The protagonist apologized to everyone for making them wait, and he announced that the cafe at the farm was open. The beastmen were finally happy. Sienna said that she was already tired of waiting. Visitors entered the cafe. Sienna entered with everyone else. She was surprised. God, how spacious it has become here. MC said that he had expanded the cafe so that people could relax in comfort. Visitors raised their heads up. Look at the ceiling. Windows all the way to the ceiling. It's as light as outside. How wonderful. The protagonist was glad that the visitors liked it. It was a great idea. How he wanted to tell Dario and Shira about this, but it was probably better not to disturb them. Isagi walked past the tables at the cafe. Everyone was admiring the delicious food. He saw Mercia and was surprised. It turns out she can even carry food with her tail. Sienna said that not all beastmen are capable of this. It is difficult to train a tail. It is surprisingly difficult to intentionally move it. The protagonist was stunned by what he heard. He didn't know how. He thought, by the way, Sienna has the same tail as Mercia, black and beautiful. But their tail is not like Kokuro's tail. Sienna saw his gaze and said, "He's looking so intently, she is even embarrassed." The protagonist was confused. He asked to forgive him. The conversation just turned to tails and he got distracted. MC scratched his head. Probably among beastmen it is not customary to look at tails and it is considered something impolite. Mercia saw everything from the side and was upset by his behavior. She came up to the protagonist's table, threw down a plate. "Sorry for the wait. Your order, cabbage rolls and tomato sauce." Sienna made a remark to her. She needs to serve the dishes more carefully. Mercia answered, "Okay," and asked if she could clear away the empty plates. Sienna politely answered, "Yes, of course." The protagonist wanted to apologize for Mercia, but Sienna interrupted him and said that Mercia was so cute when she was jealous. "Well, it's time to start eating." Sienna started trying. Very tasty. Another customer at her table said, "This gratin is simply incomparable." The protagonist stood in the middle of the cafe and heard that Sienna and the other guests seemed to like everything very much. Great, a good start. Dario and Shire looked at MC in horror. He gave them a thumbs up and they relaxed and breathed a sigh of relief. Suddenly, one of the customers raised her hand and said loudly, "Sorry, is their dinner not ready yet?" Dario was horrified and dumbfounded. "Oh no." Shire nervously hissed at him. Now is not the time to stand in a daze. He must go and cook the food faster. He obeyed her. "Yes." Shire muttered, "What to do? She does not have time." The protagonist thought, it seems that the cooks have become even busier than before. He came up and asked Shire, "What happened?" She turned her head to him and apologized. There were unexpectedly many guests, and now there are not enough dishes. The protagonist thought, this is a serious problem. All the employees are busy serving customers, and the plates are special, suitable for the dishes. This cannot be so easily replaced. He knew what to do. MC ran out of the cafe. "Wait a bit. He will solve the problem now." Shire was surprised. How so? After some time, he returned accompanied by a golem and said that washing the plates can be left to the golem. The golem got to work. Shire objected to the protagonist and said that the golem would definitely not wash away the dirt. The golem showed her the plates. She was surprised. "Are the plates clean?" MC explained that this sponge and detergent were special, made with alchemy. He said that he would also dry the plates with alchemy, and Shire could go and do the cooking now. She thanked him for that. After that, the work went steadily, and the first day of the cafe's opening was successful. Some time had passed since the cafe's opening. Isagi came to the farm to check how the beastmen were working. They were just resting, and the protagonist told them not to be shy and to continue resting. They were all sitting together under the humidifier. MC asked how they liked such a magical device. Ragmat replied that if it weren't for this device, he would have definitely fallen over from fatigue. Isagi said that he was glad that everyone liked it. He approached the wolf and asked how the device was. Did he like Kokoro? The wolf replied, "Not so bad." The protagonist laughed. It seemed that even the wolf liked it. "By the way, guys, he brought food for everyone. Everyone was happy. Hooray!" The protagonist took out colorful sandwiches from the Plaminia Farm Cafe from his backpack. Everyone perked up. It looked great. Asagi wished them bon appetit. Suddenly, his name was called. MC was surprised. Kelsey galloped in. Lately, there have been more visitors, and he was clearly in a good mood. MC said, "Hello, Kelsey, good morning." But Kelsey was expressionless. He apologized to the protagonist for the suddenness and asked if Asagi could build an inn. The protagonist was surprised. "An inn?" Kelsey begged, "It's really urgent. Otherwise, tourists will fill everything and they will have nowhere to sleep." Mercia apologized and said that it was all because of her problematic father. Isagi reassured her. There was nothing to worry about. Who would have thought that there would be so many visitors? Mercia objected to him. "No, She had warned him in advance. It was her father's fault that he had taken it lightly and had not started building the inn. Kelsey said that his daughter was too strict with her father. The protagonist tried to reassure them both and said that they needed him for just such cases. He asked, so where approximately would they need to build? Kelsey was puzzled. He needed to think about it now. He brought the protagonist to the square and asked, what about this place? It's next to the central square. The terrain here is almost level. Then Kelsey added, and most importantly, the well is very close. The protagonist understood everything. He said that this was where they would build. Kelsey went about his business and said that he was counting on Izagi. Mercia then asked her father to look for workers. He agreed and said that she could rely on him. MC asked her, well, shall we get started? She agreed, let's do it. He asked Mercia, would 30 rooms be enough? She answered him in the affirmative. He said then the materials would be just right. Well, let's start building. The protagonist began to use alchemy. First, we need to lay the foundation, then build the walls, then insert the glass, build the roof, and finally, we need to make the doors. The hotel is ready. Mercia praised him. Great job, Mr. Isagi. He thanked her and asked if she would help him with the interior. She answered happily. MC said that on the first floor there would be a reception desk, as well as a kitchen and a pantry for food. To the right of the exit would be a dining room. The second and third floors are the guest rooms divided by size, single, double, quadruple, and 6-bed. Mercia understood everything. The protagonist explained to her that he was focusing on hotels in the imperial style. How does she like it? She replied that she thought it was good. She would like the chairs to be a little further apart. MC was surprised and asked if the chairs were too close together. Mercia explained that the guests' tails might touch each other. Isagi said that he hadn't thought of that. They went up the stairs, then the rooms for accommodation. On the second floor there were inexpensive rooms for a large number of people. The rooms on the third floor were suitable for those who wanted to live in comfort. And at the back of the third floor was a deluxe room. He took the girl into this room and asked if she liked it. Mercia replied that it was a great inn. She would call her father for a final check. The protagonist agreed with her. Yes, it was good. After a while, Kelsey came and immediately began to admire. Wow, he said that he was amazed by Isagi's alchemy every time. The protagonist thanked him for that. Kelsey noted that the inn was somehow too luxurious for their village. MC agreed. He had overdone it a little. Kelsey reassured him. Everything is fine. Thanks to Isagi, their village can attract tourists. Kelsey is really grateful to the protagonist. MC replied that if there was anything else that Kelsey needed, he could safely contact him. Kelsey agreed and said that he would be counting on him from now on. Mercia came up and handed her father the papers. Here are the construction expenses. Kelsey was speechless. He bowed to her and said that he had a very strict daughter. Suddenly, the protagonist heard a scream. Oh, there you are. MC saw. It was Koni. He asked Mercia, is today the day of regular shopping? She answered, no. Koni came up and said that she was looking for Isagi. She brought a letter. There was a lion crest on the letter. He decided to ask just in case, who is the sender? Koni answered, it is the king of the beastmen, Lionel. MC asked if it is possible to open the letter here. Koni confirmed it. Yes, be sure to read it. Isagi began to read the letter and only smirked. Mercia asked, what does it say? The protagonist was surprised. He can't believe that this king could write such an official letter. Well, in short, thanks to the crops improved by the protagonist, many in the kingdom avoided famine. And for this reason, the king officially expresses his gratitude. So, this is an invitation to the royal capital? Koni smiled slyly. Huh? Mercia congratulated Lord Izagi on the invitation from the king. She said that it was a great honor. The protagonist thanked her. He said that for him, just this letter was enough. After all, he just did what he had to. Mercia objected. She said that he should accept the words of gratitude. His merit is very great. The king needs to publicly express his gratitude. Koni added that if he does not go, she will have problems. Izagi thought that given Lord Lionel's position, this would be a great opportunity. The protagonist replied, okay, he will go to the capital. Mercia and Koni were delighted and thanked him for that. After all, if he refused the invitation of the king of the empire, it would be considered a grave insult and would be punishable by death. Koni rushed to hug him and said that they were leaving right now. The protagonist was surprised. Koni answered, of course. It can't make Mr. Lionel wait. Izagi thought about the fact that it was unknown when he would be able to return. In any case, he couldn't leave right now. Considering that his trip could be delayed, it was necessary to take care of preserving the harvest, its use, and the transfer of authority. She said that he needed 2 days to prepare. He asked Koni, would this period be okay? Koni thought about the fact that 2 days were needed. Isagi tried to negotiate with her. The protagonist said that if she gave him this time, he would significantly shorten the journey to the capital. Koni asked, really? MC answered, of course. In the future, trading will be much easier. Connie said that she would trust him and wait for 2 days. The protagonist thanked her. Isagi offered to take Connie and the others to the inn. Mercia replied, "Yes, I obey." Connie asked, "Is there an inn in this village?" The protagonist had some things to do. The capital of the Beastman Kingdom, that was good. He didn't know how long he would be going, but what worried him most was the harvest. The crops that fit in the small containers, he put in a magic bag. The things inside the large bag were preserved in their current state. The problem was the fruits that didn't fit in the magic bag. Isagi decided to start by collecting the ones that were already ripe. And for the rest of the plants, he used a factor that greatly slowed down growth. The protagonist happily entrusted the golem with the rest. Isagi looked out the window and wondered what to do with the crops on the farm. 2 days later, it was time to leave. Naya was crying and said that she would never forget the protagonist. All the other workers just stood and watched. Nora asked if the protagonist would return to them again, right? Isagi apologized to everyone and said that he was leaving the farm in their hands. Ragmont said that Mercia had explained in detail how to act during their absence. They would work according to her instructions. Rhodes said that they could handle it. Isagi replied that this was very encouraging. He thought that Mercia had managed to give instructions even here. Maybe it was time to appoint her as the new head of the farm. Nora told the protagonist that the farm and the cafe could be safely left in their hands. Shire said that MC had created a golem for them that washed the dishes, so they would have everything under control. Dario asked the protagonist not to worry, they would try their best. Isagi replied that the cooks could be relied upon. Mercia said that everything was ready for the journey. Sienna clarified that everyone was gathered. Naya asked Mercia if she was wearing her maid outfit again. Mercia replied that it was her official uniform. The village chief asked the protagonist if he thought something was missing. Shouldn't he bring a weapon? Isagi replied that he wasn't good at martial arts. He noticed the anger on the village chief's face. The protagonist asked if he was okay. Kelsey exhaled and asked Mercia if maybe they shouldn't go to the Beastman's capital. Mercia replied that they couldn't refuse the king's invitation. Sienna asked her daughter to protect Isagi properly. Mercia replied that she would do it, even at the cost of her life. The protagonist thought, shouldn't he have said that? MC tried to calm Kelsey down and said that although he didn't have any martial arts, he could use alchemy and magic, so there was no need to worry. Kelsey replied that if it was with magic, then fine. He asked if alchemy could be useful in battle. Isagi answered affirmatively and demonstrated his power. Thorns appeared from the ground and the air contracted. After Isagi demonstrated his power, Mercia thought that he could fight too, so there was nothing to worry about. At that moment, a carriage pulled up to the inn. A joyful Connie ran out of the inn. Isagi wished her good morning and asked how the inn was. Connie replied that it was wonderful. She forgot about work and had a good rest. This had not happened for a long time. She did not think that such a luxurious inn could be found in a small village. Isagi said that the main thing was that she had a good time. Connie asked what kind of shortcut this was. MC replied that this time, they would use a special golem horse. Connie thought about the fact that the golem horse would not get tired at all. As long as there were magic stones, she could ride calmly. This way, she could greatly shorten the time. Connie looked at the horse and said, "What a giant." Isagi said that he had slightly modified the golem for long-distance travel. For a farm, a horse is the size of a pony, and this is a military standard horse. Connie asked, "Is this horse much faster?" Isagi replied that such a horse can easily pull the entire cart. Connie said that this invention will greatly increase future sales. She decided to harness this horse to the cart. Isagi got into the cart and told his assistants that he was counting on them. The cart set off. Kelsey waved and said that they had taken care of themselves. Sienna shouted at them to behave well. The entire friendly team waved after the cart. Mercia and Isagi shouted that they were leaving. The village smoothly moved away. Isagi thought, forward to the capital of the Beastmen. Meanwhile, the Empire was preparing for a military offensive against the kingdom of the Beastmen. In the workshop of the court alchemists, military shells and uniforms were being mass-produced. Everyone was working on something. Garius entered the room. One of the subordinates said that he was glad to see the boss. Garius answered sharply that there was no need for pleasantries. He asked how things were going with the production of magic bags. The subordinate pointed to the bags and said, "Here they are." Garius was indignant. "What is this?" He said that he ordered to make 200 of them, and here there are not even half. The subordinate apologized. He said that because of the production of military magic equipment, they cannot allocate enough time. The boss asked, "Is he making fun of him?" During the last war, they met the entire quota. The subordinate answered that back then, Isagi did everything alone. Garius shouted at the subordinate to stop talking nonsense. He asked how one person could do everything. The subordinate answered that the protagonist used potions and worked for a whole week without sleep or rest. Garius said, if that is the case, then let everyone drink these potions. We need to cut down on sleep time and increase production. The subordinate replied that it was impossible. Boss was indignant. What? The subordinate replied that it took a huge amount of magical energy to produce magic bags. Asagi had a lot of energy to begin with, and his energy recovery rate was incredibly high. Even if they increased the work time, they still couldn't handle that much work. Garius repeated Isagi's name over and over. Isagi, Isagi. He said that wherever he went, the protagonist always screwed up. The subordinate asked if maybe they should lower the production rate. The boss yelled at him to shut up. He said that it was Prince Weiss's order. As he left, he said that he would check the work again in 3 days. If the workers do not increase production, they will regret it. It will be as if their heads are no longer theirs. He slammed the door loudly. The alchemists asked their boss what they should do. After all, they were asking the impossible. He replied that they were ordered to make magic bags in the specified quantity. But there were no specific instructions regarding the storage capacity. One of the workers asked if the boss meant to say that they were cheating. The boss replied that they would simply reduce the capacity of the magic bags. Garius admired the city at night. The cart rolled along the road. Mercia said that the village of Pluminia was no longer visible. Koni was surprised that there was only one horse harnessed, and such a speed. Isagi clarified that the horse was getting faster, but he was more worried about the cart. Koni replied that the cart was made of strong materials, so even extreme conditions were not scary for it. Isagi replied that if that was the case, then there was no reason to hold back the horse. He waved his hand and the horse sped up. The driver grabbed the chair to keep from falling. Koni flew off her chair and fell right on top of the protagonist. He asked if she was okay. Koni thanked Isagi for catching her. She said she was fine. Isagi smiled and said it was good that she was not hurt, but if they were to go at that speed, they would have to make seatbelts. Mercia replied that maybe that was a good idea. Isagi asked Mercia if she was angry. Koni laughed. Mercia replied that she was not angry. 4 days later, there were 20 miles, 32 kilometers left to the capital. Koni begged the protagonist to sell her the horse. Isagi replied, okay. Koni was already counting the profit in her head. She was sure that now the trade would go very easily. Mercia told the protagonist that the capital was already in sight. He was surprised when he saw the tree of the beginning in the distance. Isagi said that it looked like the legendary Dismissal. They say that the first king of the Beastmen built a city around this giant tree. That is how the capital appeared. Koni said that King Lionel lived there. Mercia said that it would be quite easy to find him. The protagonist agreed. The guard at the gate said that entry was prohibited. The guests were expected to arrive in 10 days. No visits were planned for today. Isagi was surprised. Had they really arrived so early? Koni answered the guard that they had arrived ahead of schedule, and she told the guard to tell Mr. Lionel that they were waiting here, and the king would understand everything at once. The second guard shouted that they should not make noise, otherwise they would use force. He wanted to answer Koni rudely, but at that moment King Lionel appeared on the balcony. He ordered the guard not to raise his hand against the guests. He said that these people were his guests. Koni and Mercia raised their heads up. The king greeted them and said that they had arrived faster than he expected. He ran up to his guests and told the guards that they were too stern. Asagi thought that the king was acting freely as always. Lionel called the guests to follow him. Chancellor Kevin shouted at the king that he had not finished his work yet, and asked him to come back quickly. The king replied that he just wanted to see the guests off. Kevin replied that he would see the guests off himself, and that he should wait for everyone in the audience hall. Isagi thought that Kevin was stern as always. The king was upset and went into the castle, saying, "Sorry for the wait." Koni said that she would leave the guests for now. Asagi thanked her for everything. Kevin asked the guests to follow the spiral staircase. Asagi thought that the audience hall was really made inside the trunk of a tree. He climbed the stairs higher and higher, and realized that the hall was too high. The chancellor asked how about looking for a place with a good view before the meeting? The protagonist replied that that was a good idea. The chancellor showed the way. They went out onto a large balcony with a beautiful view of the city. There was a huge fountain on the balcony. Mercia was surprised by the view of the city from above. Small, neat houses, people walking along the streets, children playing in the park on the grass. Mercia said that life in the capital is different. The atmosphere is completely different from the one in the Empire. In the Empire, as soon as you move away from the bright central streets, you find yourself in the slums. There was a huge gap between the poor and the rich. Wealthy people do not pay attention to the poor at all. But here, in this city, everything is different. Even if you move away from the main street, there are no poor people filling the streets. Both adults and children look happy. The protagonist asked Kevin if maybe this is what he wanted to show. Kevin answered that although the king is a little capricious, his concern for the people is real. Isagi was a little surprised. He said that if only he could show the common people of the empire a different life with the help of alchemy. After all, he could have stayed and worked there, but in the end, he abandoned his people. He scolded himself for putting his own life before others. Mercia tried to calm him down. She said that if he continued his work as an alchemist, it would definitely bring light to the people of the empire. She asked him not to blame himself. Kevin agreed with her words. He said that Isagi had already given light to many inhabitants of the Beastman Kingdom. As the Chancellor, he wanted to express his gratitude once again. Isagi thought about the fact that he already had what he had built here. Instead of clinging to the past, he would believe in himself and confidently move forward. He thanked everyone for their support and said that he felt better. Suddenly, a leaf fell into his hands. The Chancellor said that it was a leaf from a great tree and asked him to pick it up. Isagi asked if it was possible to do so because it was a very rare material. Kevin replied that if it was Isagi, then it was no problem. Besides, the tree itself had chosen him. Isagi was surprised, raised his head up and said, "The great tree." Kevin said that it was time to go to the audience hall. Isagi held a leaf of the great tree in his hand. They entered the hall, where the king in a robe and the queen were sitting on thrones. King Lionel said that as it was written in the letter, he wanted to express his gratitude for the help in connection with the famine. The harvest began to grow quickly throughout the kingdom, and this saved the lives of people suffering from a lack of food. Lionel said that as a king, he expressed deep gratitude. Queen Crane was sitting next to King Lionel. Isagi and Mercia knelt down before the royal couple and bowed their heads. Isagi said that he was flattered that the king appreciated him so highly. The queen introduced herself that her name was Crane. She had heard about the merits of the protagonist from the king. As a sign of gratitude for saving the people, she offered to accept the jewels. Isagi thanked the queen. Two servants entered the hall and brought in 2 chests. Opening the chests, the protagonist was surprised to find that there were not only gold coins but also weapons and minerals. King Lionel asked to accept this gift. Isagi realized that with this wealth, he would be able to collect quality materials and create something that he could not do before. He asked Mercia what happened. She cried when she saw so many treasures and replied that she was fine. She said that no one in the empire noticed how good he was, and that made her feel bad. But now that she sees that he is finally recognized, her soul became happy. Isagi replied that it was she who brought him here and thanked her for it. King Lionel said officially, "Well, now the formalities are over." He stood up and went to meet Isagi and Mercia. The king allowed them to behave as usual. The protagonist replied, "Fine." He took out the gifts he had prepared from his magic bag. The king was surprised. He asked, "Is this a horse golem?" But in the form of a noble lion. The queen was surprised that there were fresh fruits. Lionel said that there was no need to drag it out and suggested getting straight to the point. One of the guards suggested checking if the food was poisoned. Lionel replied that they would do without it. The guard was indignant that this was not possible. The king tried the fruits and said that they were incredibly delicious as always. The Queen of Crane confirmed her husband's words. Isagi replied, "Thank you." The king asked the protagonist if he had any free time. He said that he appreciated his skills and wanted to entrust him with something. Isagi replied that he was listening carefully. The king said that the beastmen had a higher birth rate than humans, which meant that they needed more food. MC replied that he knew about this fact. The king continued and said that the royal family had been supporting food production, agriculture, fishing, etc. for many generations. But everything has a limit. Right now, production can't keep up with consumption. And to solve this problem, the king wanted to entrust the support of agriculture in the country to the protagonist. Isagi answered, "I see." The king said that he wanted Isagi to build a farm in the Laos desert. Isagi was very surprised. In the Laos desert? The king was surprised that the protagonist knew about the desert. Isagi said that there was almost no rain in this desert. Lots of sand, rocks, and very dry. It would be harder to do than in the village of Plumania. It was simply impossible. He asked why the king had chosen this particular place. The farm could be built anywhere. The king explained that the problem was that a tribe of colored birds and red bulls lived there. There had been some tension between them lately. The conflict escalated. Quarrels often arise due to lack of water and food. War between one's own is a very stupid idea. The protagonist thought that these were pointless conflicts. He had seen such situations many times in the empire. This could not be called normal. The king said that creating a farm was a difficult task. Even if it did not work out right away, it was okay. "Can we try again?" Isagi looked at Mercia. She closed her eyes approvingly. The protagonist answered, "Good," and added that he could not guarantee anything. But he promised that he would try to breed crops that could grow even in the Laotian desert. He would do everything possible for this. King Lionel was glad that Izagi agreed. Queen Crane said that they were deeply grateful for his kindness. The king suggested getting down to business right away. He asked if it was possible to send one guide with the protagonist. The road to the desert was difficult and harsh. Isagi answered as His Majesty wished. Mercia said that if the guide becomes a burden, they will abandon him. She personally wanted to control the security of Lord Isagi. MC thought about the fact that Mercia personally wants to control the security. Does that mean the monsters there are so dangerous? He remembered that the monsters are divided into 3 types. The first type are weak monsters. The second level, like Kokuro, and the third level is stronger than Kokuro. The king said that they can rest assured. He guarantees that the guide will not interfere with them. The king invited the guide to enter. The doors opened and a female silhouette appeared in the doorway. Mercia said, red-haired. Isagi continued, a girl? The girl said that she was pleased to meet you. She introduced herself that her name is Regina. She is the first princess and the sister of the 63rd king of the Beastmen, Lionel. Isagi and Mercia opened their mouths in surprise. Isagi asked if their guide was a princess. Regina replied that she is a princess. Is there any problem? Isagi said that the desert was dangerous and what if something happened? Regina replied that she was not going to just sit in the castle just because she was a princess. Isagi tried to protest, but the king replied that everything was decided. He said that the princess should see with her own eyes what was happening in the country. A girl from a golden cage was not needed in the castle. Isagi asked Mercia what she thought about this. Mercia replied that Lady Regina's fame as a warrior was known throughout the country. She believed that the princess would be an excellent guide. The princess shouted that she might not be as strong as her father and mother, but she was no worse than everyone else. The protagonist replied that if that was the case, he would not object. Regina replied that she could be relied on. King Lionel added that if they succeeded, they would receive a reward. If there were any wishes, he would listen carefully. Isagi was delighted and asked if he could have the leaves or branches of the great tree. The king thought for a moment and asked why he needed them. Isagi replied that the great tree was a true miracle. King Lionel replied that he had heard the protagonist's wish, and that when everything worked out, he would give him the materials of the great tree. Isagi thanked the king and said that it was time to begin preparing for departure. Isagi and Mercia stood on the street of the city. The protagonist said that all that remained was to wait for Lady Regina. Mercia asked if Mr. Isagi was sure that he had done the right thing by taking on such a task. Isagi replied that since the royal family had given them such support, they were obliged to achieve some result. But in truth, it would be extremely difficult to grow something in the desert. Even if he failed, he would not give up. Agriculture in desert areas had originally been his research topic. Mercia was surprised. Isagi said that about a third of the world's arable land is arid areas where farming is very difficult. In addition, due to desertification and environmental destruction by wars, this proportion of land is gradually increasing. Mercia said that if they develop crops that can grow in harsh conditions, they will be able to establish food production in larger areas. Isagi answered that it is true. He understood that there is no guarantee that they will succeed. Mercia, on the contrary, was confident that Mr. Isagi would be able to cope, and if everything goes smoothly, it will be a real revolution in agriculture. Isagi said that she is right. Mercia said again that Mr. Isagi is amazing. The protagonist said to himself that he must live up to Mercia's expectations. A voice was heard from behind, asking for forgiveness for the wait. The princess said that she is ready. She was standing with a huge backpack on her back. The protagonist did not expect to see this. He noticed her sword and asked if she was a swordsman. The princess replied that she could say so. She asked why the protagonist had so few things. Isagi asked what about the magic bag. If the princess wanted, he could take her things too. Regina was surprised, right? She said that she would gladly accept his offer. He put the princess's things in his bag and asked if she could ride the golem horse. The princess jumped on the horse in an instant. Isagi realized that there would be no problem with this and suggested that they set off. Suddenly, the princess said, "Stop." The protagonist asked what happened. The princess replied that she didn't like the way they treated her. She asked him not to speak to her so formally. Isagi tried to object, but the princess explained, "Isn't it more tiring than normal communication?" Isagi smiled and replied, "Okay, Regina." Mercia apologized and said that she always communicated like this. Regina replied that that was enough. The protagonist asked, "Well, shall we go?" And they all set off together in unison. The princess was glad that the golem horse was completely different from the previous ones. The protagonist thought that although it was the princess's first time riding a horse, she was riding so fast. She had outstanding abilities after all. He said that they were entering a forest and asked if the princess could handle the controls. The princess replied, "No problem." She suggested that they go at full speed. Isagi replied, "Okay." He and Mercia wouldn't lag behind either. It was getting darker and the protagonist could no longer see the road. He suggested that the princess slow down. The princess asked why. Isagi replied that it was dark and the road was getting worse. Mercia told the princess that Mr. Isagi was from the human race and he couldn't see in the dark the way they did. The princess replied, exactly. Mercia asked to slow down. Regina said that everything would be fine. She and Mercia will choose a more suitable path for Isagi. She suggested rushing further. The protagonist thought that the princess was just a demon. Mercia suggested relying on them. They rushed through the forest at high speed. Isagi asked Mercia if she heard a noise. Mercia replied that something was approaching. She shouted that she would protect Lord Isagi. At that moment, the princess pulled out her sword and said that she would deal with it. A huge bear jumped out of the darkness. The princess ripped open its belly with one movement and it fell dead. The protagonist was surprised that it was an owlbear. He did not understand how Regina was able to kill such a beast with one blow. The princess said that this dense forest is full of monsters, so it is better to break through the forest as quickly as possible. Isagi asked if there were monsters of this level here. Regina answered yes. Moreover, this owlbear was the easiest opponent. MC said that then we should quickly get out of the forest, but he was not sure that he could handle the controls. Regina offered to sit with her. Mercia shouted for Mr. Isagi to sit with her. Mercia apologized for shouting. Isagi told the princess that he would sit behind Mercia. The princess smiled sweetly. Mercia blushed with excitement. The protagonist suggested that before they went on, they take the owlbear meat with them for food. The princess said that the meat was tasteless and had an unpleasant smell. Isagi replied that he would process it with alchemy and everything would be fine. He made a few movements, collected the bear's blood in vials, and said that after the blood was completely drained, the smell should be significantly reduced. The princess was surprised and said that it was quite a creepy sight. Isagi agreed with her, but said that for the sake of tasty food, one has to make sacrifices. The princess jumped on her horse. Isagi apologized to Mercia and said that he would sit behind her. Both of them had an awkward silence. Isagi was embarrassed to touch Mercia. She sternly asked Mr. Isagi to move forward a little and hold on tightly to her. She said that the road would only get worse and if something happened to him, she would not forgive herself. Isagi overcame his embarrassment and hugged Mercia. Mercia purred. Isagi asked what that sound was. Mercia answered that he imagined it. The princess suggested that they ride on. A few hours later, at the end of the forest, the bright sun appeared. Regina said that the plain was almost visible. She said that this golem horse is simply incredible. They rode through the entire forest in just half a day. Isagi replied that it was actually thanks to their management skills. The two of them were really great. The protagonist thanked Mercia and said that she had helped him a lot. Mercia replied that you were welcome. Isagi said that they would spend the night here today and would set off again in the morning. The princess was happy to spend the night in the countryside. She dreamed of sitting by the tent next to the fire and the starry sky above. Hearing the protagonist's voice that everything was ready, the last thing she expected was to see a small wooden house in front of her. Isagi said something like that. Mercia replied that she would like to cook dinner and could Isagi get some meat? The princess was upset and said that this was not an overnight stay. She asked where they had seen an overnight stay in the countryside in such a luxurious house. Isagi replied that for him, building a house was faster than putting up a tent, and they don't need a fire because it has a magical device. The princess said that she was stupid when she tried to explain to the protagonist what a normal overnight stay in the countryside is. Mercia said that dinner was ready. There was soup and owlbear kebab on the table. The princess pounced on the food with great appetite. Isagi wished everyone a bon appetit. The princess ate the kebab and said that the meat did not smell at all and that it turned out to be very tasty. Mercia replied that she was glad to hear it. This is thanks to the fact that Mr. Isagi perfectly processed the bear carcass. The protagonist said that owlbear meat usually has a pungent smell, so he thanked Mercia for the excellent cooking. The princess ate a portion of soup, said that it was awesome, and asked for more. In the morning, following Regina's instructions, they crossed the forest, passed through the wastelands, and on the third day of travel, a desert stretched out before their eyes to the west. They rode slowly through the desert. The protagonist said that it was too hot. Besides, golems couldn't run normally on sand. He asked when they would reach the settlement. The princess answered that there was no point in hurrying. They would have to slow down anyway. The protagonist was surprised. Regina said that the local monsters were very strong. If they ran into them, there would be nowhere to run. They had to be careful. Isagi was surprised because the princess had killed such a big bear with one blow. The princess answered that that was why they were moving in the formation they were in now. The protagonist asked again, in the formation? The princess explained that she was walking in front for navigation and close combat. Isagi was in the middle for support, and Mercia is behind for reconnaissance and close combat. Isagi asked, "Doesn't it look like they are protecting the weakest one here?" Mercia asked him not to worry, she will definitely protect him. Isagi thanked Mercia and told her to put her life first. Mercia answered, even if it means sacrificing her life. The princess heard something. She shouted that they are under attack. The protagonist asked what and where. Regina shouted that it was right under them and ordered them to spread out. Monsters in the form of huge scorpions crawled out of the sand. The protagonist called the princess by name. He said that they were scorpions and a whole flock of them. Princess asked to leave the fight to her and shouted for Mercia to protect Isagi. The princess drew her sword and got into a fighting stance. The scorpion tried to hit her with its sting, but the princess jumped aside and struck. She fought bravely with the huge scorpion, striking it blow after blow. Having dealt with one scorpion, she began to fight another. The protagonist and Mercia watched the fight from the side. Isagi said that it was amazing. Mercia added that this was exactly what was expected from Lady Regina. The princess shouted that it seemed like a bigger comrade had appeared. During the attack of the huge scorpion, Isagi touched the ground and used magic. Regina asked what it was. The protagonist answered, simply alchemy. He used magic to compact the sand and change its shape. The princess asked, "Can chemistry do that too?" Isagi answered that he thought he could break through with the first blow, but scorpions have a hard shell on their back and legs, and a soft belly, so this is how they can be defeated. Princess Regina answered, "I understand." She approached him and asked, "Isn't that great?" She said that Isagi could now be considered a full-fledged combat unit. The protagonist replied that it was true to some extent, but don't rely on him too much. If they moved abruptly, it would only get worse. It was extremely hot outside. The sun was rising higher and higher, and the high temperature was simply killing. Isagi asked Mercia how she was. Mercia replied that there were no problems yet. They could always drink water. Isagi took water from his magic bag and handed it out to everyone. The princess replied that she had more water. Isagi said that it was not just a flask. It had magical water and ice stones built in that automatically produced cold water. The protagonist smiled and said that if the princess didn't need it, he would put the flask back in his bag. Princess Regina screamed, "Yes!" She grabbed the flask and began to greedily drink the cool water. Mercia thanked the protagonist and said that with this invention, they could at least hold out somehow. He opened his flask and said how cold it was. Isagi was very surprised when the princess began to pour this water on her head. He asked what she was doing. The princess replied that she just wanted to cool down. Isagi said that her clothes were now see-through. The princess replied that she didn't need to worry about it, because in this heat, they would soon dry out. Isagi blushed, and Mercia was simply embarrassed to look. The protagonist suggested that they continue on their way. The princess agreed. As night approached, Isagi built a house for the night again. He went inside and said that it would be cool there at night. The princess replied that it was good that they had packed everything up so quickly. She asked what they would have for dinner. She said that she would like owlbear steak. Mercia looked into the magic bag and said that the owlbear meat was gone. The princess was upset and said that it was very tasty. Mercia replied that they had a lot of scorpion meat. The princess was scared and asked when Mercia had managed to get it. After all, it was poisonous. Would everything be okay with them? Isagi replied that scorpion poison was a neurotoxin, so the meat was edible. It was very healthy. The princess replied that the protagonist certainly knew a lot, but a scorpion was an insect. Isagi thought about how he was an orphan and how scorpion meat was a common thing for him. But for the princess, this was something new. Isagi asked Mercia if she could look for other food. The princess resolutely replied that she would eat it. Isagi asked again, "Are you sure?" Regina shouted loudly, "Yes!" Such a chance rarely comes. Mercia said, "Okay." But she warned the princess that if she felt sick, she should say so right away. Regina answered, "Okay." Mercia put a bowl of food on the table and said that dinner was ready. For dinner, there was scorpion soup and fried scorpion. Isagi said that it looked impressive. Both dishes were delicious. He warned the princess that they were still hot and suggested trying the fried scorpion. There was fear on Regina's face when she took a piece of fried scorpion. Isagi said that it was tastier than the scorpions he had tried before in the Empire. The princess overcame her fear and bit into a piece of meat. Mercia asked the princess how she liked it. The princess replied that it was much better than she expected. She didn't think that the scorpion would be so delicious. Mercia suggested trying the soup. Regina agreed. She said that the meat was soft and tasty, and the broth was excellent. Isagi said that the princess knows how to surprise. She defeated monsters and tried the field kitchen. Mercia added that you would hardly meet such people among the royal family. MC asked why she, being a princess, chose the role of a guide. Regina replied that since childhood she admired her father and wanted to become an outstanding warrior. She trained a lot and eventually managed to lead the army. But one day, an enemy appeared that could not be defeated by physical strength alone. It was hunger. No matter how many enemies she defeated, she could not feed the people. And this enemy was not defeated by a mighty warrior, but by a simple alchemist from the human race who could not be called strong. The protagonist said, "No way." Regina answered, "Yes, it was him, Isagi." And to be completely honest, the princess was very offended. She remembered her father's words that strength is not only physical strength, it is the ability to negotiate, knowledge, magic. Only by mastering all these forces can one protect one's people. That is why she wanted to become a guide to see the strength of the protagonist, to become even stronger and protect the kingdom of beastmen. MC thought that the princess of the kingdom came here with a strong determination. He told the princess that they were leaving here tomorrow. We need to start acting as soon as possible to solve the problem of hunger. Mercia supported the protagonist. The princess replied that she was not very collected in the mornings. 3 days later, they were still walking through the desert. Mercia asked Mr. Isagi to look away. His eyes widened in surprise. At the bottom of the hill was an oasis with trees and a lake. Isagi screamed, "Water!" Mercia said that they had reached the oasis. Finally, there was something other than sand, rocks, and cacti. Isagi began to wash his face with water. He said that he could live again. Mercia handed him a towel. The protagonist thanked Mercia. The princess said that usually in such conditions they rushed to replenish their water supplies, but thanks to the magic bag and magic tools there were no problems with water. There was enough water for several more years. Mercia asked Regin how much longer it was to go to the settlement of the beastmen. The princess answered that it was less than half a day's journey from the oasis to the settlement of the birds. Mercia asked, "And to the settlement of the Red Bulls?" The princess answered that it was a little further to the southwest. Isagi asked if they would first visit the settlement of the birds and then move on to the settlement of the Red Bulls. The princess answered, "It was decided." Suddenly, something flew over the protagonist's legs. The princess commanded, "Back!" Isagi fell on his back and saw arrows at his feet. The beastmen flying in the sky asked what outsiders were doing here and who they were. They were warriors from the tribe of colored birds, a boy and a girl. The leader of the birds shouted, "Outsiders! What are they doing here?" He asked if the outsiders were going to destroy their oasis. The protagonist replied that they were not outsiders at all. They came here on the orders of the king of the beastmen. The leader of the birds was surprised. From the king of the beastmen? A strong statement. Another girl from the birds said, "Who would believe this?" The protagonist shouted that he was telling the truth. "Look, here is your proof." The first princess, Lady Regina. Regina demanded that they take a close look at her ears and tail. They should see that she clearly has lion blood, right? MC knew the blood of the Leo is the symbol of the royal family. There is definitely no arguing with that. The bird people calmed down a bit, and the girl asked the guy, had he ever seen a lion beastman? He told her no, he hadn't. She asked, "What does a lion look like anyway?" The guy hesitated. He didn't know. The protagonist was surprised by their words. That couldn't be true. He turned to Regina. Was she really in the village of the colored bird tribe? Regina was indignant. Of course she was. It's just that these two don't know anything about the world. The bird people asked, "Do strangers take them for fools?" The protagonist understood. Now the bird people got even more angry. The guy shouted at the protagonist that they are impudent people who pretend to be the royal family. Now they will get it. Mercia turned to Regina in fear. "Let's hold them back." Suddenly, another bird person appeared and shouted, "Stop it!" The protagonist was surprised. Who is it? She demanded that Inez and Reed, that was the names of the attackers, put away their weapons. This lady, Regina, is the daughter of the Beast King Lionel. They obeyed. "Yes, Chief." MC was surprised. Was this third one the chief of the colored bird tribe? She turned to Mrs. Regina. "It's been a long time. Mrs. Regina has grown a lot." Regina replied, "How many years, Tees?" "It's been 5 years." Mercia was surprised and asked Regin, did she know the chief of the colored bird tribe? Tees knelt down and said that she apologized for this misunderstanding. These people had no evil intent. They just wanted to protect the oasis, which is vital to them, and a mistake was made. She asks Regin to forgive these people. Enos and Reed both asked for forgiveness. They were impolite and behaved unacceptably. Regina was angry. That's enough. She forgives everyone and asked them to raise their heads. They thanked her for her forgiveness. Tiza asked, "By the way, who are these two?" The protagonist extended his hand and said, "Nice to meet you." He is Asagi's alchemist. Mercia introduced herself after him. T said she was glad to meet you. Since they came here, they must have an important mission. But it is not safe here, so maybe she could take them to the village first? They happily agreed, of course. Regina said, "Listen to Tees." Regina wants TC to do what she did before again. TC smiled. Brings back memories. Good. Regina asked, "It is not far to fly to the settlement on their wings, right?" Isagi wondered, what is she talking about? Tease and the other guys have very slender bodies. You can't ride on their backs. He saw that they had a rope in their hands and was surprised. Tease and the other two flew up and threw them a rope. So guys, hold on to the rope. The protagonist was surprised. So they will fly. Hold on to this? He wondered, can they handle their weight? Tease answered, no problem. Despite their appearance, they, the tribe of colored birds, have very strong legs. Isagi took hold of the rope and said, then he won't hold everyone back. Tease commanded, well, go ahead. The protagonist was a little scared. Wow! It felt like he was flying in the sky. Regina was happy. What a beautiful view from above. Mercia said the wind was very pleasant. The protagonist screamed. It was like he himself had become a bird. He thought if only it were possible to move around the world like this. Tease said that they would soon arrive at a village. When they landed, Isagi thought that it looked more like a fortress in a war zone than a village. They were received hospitably. Tease brought tea. Mercia thanked her. Tease told her, this tea is made from a flower called aromakas that grows in the desert. MC was surprised. Wow. Mercia said that the aroma was very pleasant. Regina turned to Tease and asked if she could get straight to the point. Tease agreed. Okay. Regina told them that they came here on behalf of the beastman King Lionel to improve the food situation of the colored bird tribe and the Red Bulls. She gave her a letter. All the details are here. Tisa took the letter and read it. It was indeed a letter from Mr. Lionel. She read the letter to the end and said that she was glad that they wanted to help. But what exactly should be done? The protagonist and Regina were surprised. Didn't the letter say anything? Tiesa read the letter out loud. I completely trust Regina with this matter and ask her to cooperate with her. That's it. MC was not surprised. That's just like the king. The protagonist said, if I explain in detail, they want the bird people to be able to grow crops here. Tiesa asked again, grow crops? Not like before. Get supplies of products? Regina confirmed it. Yeah. If they provide for themselves, they will be able to live without fighting with the Red Bulls for resources and food, right? Tease said that she understood everything. She is grateful to the king for his kindness. But growing anything on this land would be extremely difficult. As everyone could see, the conditions in the Laos desert are some of the harshest in the entire kingdom of beastmen. There is almost no rain, the air is dry, and the temperature changes are extremely sharp. Tease explained that they tried to grow something many times, but in the end they found that it was impossible to grow crops here. Plants either dry up or die from diseases. Asagi remembered when he came to the village, he was told something similar. But the difficulty level this time is an order of magnitude higher. Regina slapped the protagonist on the shoulder. Everything will be fine. After all, that is why she brought a skilled alchemist with her. From this, the protagonist spilled tea. He apologized and said that he would clean everything up now. MC whispered to Regina and said that she was raising expectations too high. She, in turn, was surprised. What's wrong with that? After all, it was he who turned that barren village of Plumania into the largest farmland in the kingdom. Asagi wanted to object, but TC interrupted him and asked with hope in her eyes, is this true? Mercia confirmed that it was true. When people began to worry that the mountains and forests would no longer be able to feed everyone, Lord Isagi was able to create crops that could be grown even on the barren earth with the help of alchemy. Thanks to this, they can now live without worrying about hunger. Isagi turned to Mercia and said that she was exaggerating. Tease looked out the window. Crops can be grown right here. She turned to Isagi. Please, help. She said that they did not want any more conflicts. Isagi then asked to give it to them. After all, they came here precisely for this. He shook her hand and asked to let him help them. Tease agreed. Of course, if her modest abilities suit him. Then she was surprised and asked, but why? Why does he, a man who does not belong to either the tribe of colored birds or the beastmen, lend a helping hand to everyone? MC wondered if hunger is suffering? When someone is suffering and you are able to help, you want to lend a helping hand. That's all. Tease fell silent. The protagonist asked, is something wrong? She quickly answered, no, everything is fine. Regina whispered, she heard from her father that Asagi is a very straightforward person. Mercia confirmed, yes, this is Mr. Asagi. The protagonist thumbed up. Well then, of course, after a long journey you want to rest, but let's get to work right away. Everyone agreed with him. Asagi said, well then, let's start with exploring the surroundings of the settlement. Regina asked, where should this exploration begin? The protagonist crouched and answered, from the soil, from here. Regina stuck her sword into the ground, firm. The protagonist was indignant. This is a valuable weapon. What is she doing? She jabbed the sword into the ground a few more times. No, I think it's nothing. Then Regina said that if we use tools, we can somehow dig it up. The protagonist agreed with her. Yeah. There are 3 conditions for good soil in which crops grow. Roots must grow well in the ground. The soil must have normal aeration, the soil must properly pass water and also properly retain moisture and nutrients. Regina asked, how is the soil here? Isagi sighed and said, It doesn't meet any of the points. Everyone was upset, so that's how it is. MC smiled and said, nevertheless, it's too early to give up. If you change the soil or mix fertilizers, maybe something will work out. Tease was hopeful, right? The protagonist calmly answered, with alchemy it is not impossible. But there is a problem. Where to get water for growing? Tease thought about it. That's true. Mercia asked. Right, Lady Tease. Can you tell me where there are sources of water here? Tease thought about it and answered. The largest source of water is that very oasis that they saw recently. Regina wondered, then it would be best to grow crops there, right? Tease hesitated. Well, how can I say? They tried it many times in the past, but each time they were hindered by animals or monsters. The protagonist agreed. Well, yes, they are not the only ones looking for water in the desert. That's why there are no settlements near the oasis. Regina suggested, then maybe lay pipes underground and bring water from the oasis to the settlement. The protagonist scratched his chin thoughtfully. There are problems with that too. Regina did not understand why. Asagi explained, the oasis is far from the settlement, the terrain between them is flat, and underground monsters like scorpions can destroy the pipes. Regina was upset, and how to deliver water? The protagonist agreed, a good question. He thought about it. Well, there is another way. He smiled and told everyone, you can create water with the help of magical artifacts. With the help of a water magic stone, you can even get water for agriculture. Tease was surprised. A magical artifact that creates water? MC showed her a vial of water in his hands. She asked in surprise, can he create that too? She approached the protagonist as if spellbound. Mercia tried to stop her and told Tease not to come so close. TA stopped and apologized. For them, such an artifact is just a dream. The protagonist scratched his head and said, he understands everything. He thought about it, but still, he would like to do without magical artifacts if possible. Mercia asked him why. He answered that there were two good reasons. The first was the harsh conditions in the Laos desert. Temperature changes and sandstorms could cause magical artifacts to break. Of course, if you send an alchemist to repair them, it wouldn't be a problem. Regina said dryly that the Beastman Kingdom already lacked alchemists. The protagonist continued. The second reason was that if the artifact broke down, agriculture would be at serious risk. Tease was upset, so what should he do now? MC explained that even if you use the artifact, you need a backup source of water in case of an emergency. If there are no sources around the settlement, then maybe they just haven't found it yet. He saw the mountains and thought that there might still be water in the mountains. Isagi asked Tease, what about those mountains? Maybe there are water veins there. Tease said that they haven't found anything there yet. Mercia asked again in surprise, so far? Tease answered that the main advantage of the bird people tribe is mobility, but it is difficult for them to move in narrow places. As a result, exploring the same deep caves seems impossible for them. Besides, there are monsters there. The protagonist asked then, why don't they go searching together? If there is a water source there, it is easy to conduct water using the slope. And because of the rocky terrain, there are no underground monsters that help to damage the pipes. Tease asked, but finding a water source will not be easy, right? The protagonist calmed her down and asked her not to worry. With the help of alchemy, you can study the layers of soil. If they all get down to business, then even one mountain can be explored in the blink of an eye. Regina was glad. Then let's go. If they don't find a source, he will think of something later. Isagi agreed with her. Yeah, forward. The whole friendly team went to search for a water source. The bird people carried the wingless in baskets to the mountains. The protagonist asked, so shall we begin? Regina asked Mr. Asagi to focus on finding a source of water. She said that she and the birdmen would take care of the security. He agreed with her and said that he relied on them. They headed into the caves. Suddenly, Isagi stopped and Regina asked, had he found it yet? He answered, no, that's not what they were looking for. She was upset. Too bad. He explained, it was just a manatite vein. Regina was surprised. What? Manatite? The protagonist said that he would take it just in case. He stuck his hand into the crack between the stones and pulled it out. Got it. Monotite is a rare material containing magical power. Its magic can enhance the characteristics of weapons and armor. Regina took it in her hands and asked, if you find a vein, you can open a big business, right? Isagi agreed with her. Yes, it is, but the deposits here are small. And more importantly, without food it makes no sense. He explained, people gather around the deposit and cities prosper thanks to their activities. But given such harsh conditions, people simply won't come here. Regina was upset. Isagi was right. It would be a shame to miss such an opportunity, but right now, their priority is a source of water. The protagonist thanked her for her understanding. They reached a crossroads in the cave. Tease asked which way they should go next. Regina thought about it. A crossroads, hard to decide. Isagi asked Mercia if she had any ideas. She asked for time to think. She took stones and first threw a stone into one tunnel, then into another. She said the right road is a dead end. The left one leads further. Regina was surprised. How did she know? Mercia explained that you can roughly understand the structure of the passage by the echo. Regina was delighted. That's cool. Mercia can do that too. Mercia needs to be ahead. Mercia asked everyone to trust her. She went ahead. Regina asked Tees. She said that there are monsters in this mountain. What kind are they? Tees hesitated and did not have time to answer. Mercia reported that she felt small silhouettes on the ceiling. And there are many of them.